We are live now.
Let's see. Hang on. It says going live on there. It's okay if, it says the video is live now. Awesome.
Mine says live, so.
That means we're live now, guys. My name is Joanna Vance, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. And what that means to me is I've not been bound by a life of substance use disorder since March the 13th of 2016. I'm a part of the organizing team for the West Virginia Recovery Advocacy Project. And Kenny, want to introduce yourself?
And my name is Kenny Matthews. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and what that means to me is I'm not bound by substance use disorder or illicit behaviors since February 22nd of 2017. And I am one of the co-state leads for the Recovery Advocacy Project here in West Virginia. And we're here with the candidates.
Matt, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Matt Kerr. I'm also a person living in long-term recovery from a substance use disorder. And what that means to me is that I haven't found it necessary to use alcohol or any other mood or mind-altering substances since May 26th of 2006 in order to adjust my perception to reality. What recovery has done for me in my life is I'm currently the executive director of Opportunity House Incorporated in Buchanan. We're a recovery community organization that does residential housing and serves our larger community in the area of addiction recovery. And, without the past that I've had, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now. Recovery has allowed me to take the deepest, darkest, worst parts of my life and make those my greatest assets so that I can now help others. And that's it. We're just trying to, I'm here to try to help kind of control things, shift people around. I know we have some people who aren't part of the feed yet, and we'll be going through candidates one at a time so that we can focus on them.
Yes, Matt's our tech person. Thank goodness. The Recovery Advocacy Project, for those of you who don't know, is a national organization, but it's all about grassroots organizing and building a constituency of people in recovery, family members, friends, and allies to think and act locally. We are in the process of working with legislature for policy change, passing bills into laws, and we decided, we just launched our Vote Recovery platform last month for Recovery Month, and we have over 300 signatures for that, and so our platform, we'll share it in the link, but it is surrounded by community inclusion and then focuses on harm reduction, reducing stigma, reform and reentry, and equal access. Kenny, do you want to tell them how we came up with that Vote Recovery platform?
Well, it's about all the things that tie us together within this multiple pathway in recovery. We actually at Mobilize Recovery online conference here that was done by the National Recovery Advocacy Project. And we decided in West Virginia about what the things that we needed to focus on for the people that are in recovery or seeking recovery in the state need. And so the things that, our main mantra is nothing about us without us. And that's kind of included with the Vote Recovery, is that we want candidates to make sure that our voices are heard, that we have a say in any legislation or any issues that pop up that affects our community. And that includes our neighbors, our friends, our family members, and us as individuals.
Yes, and we did this we hosted community listening forums, and people from all across the state, from all different pathways and everything came, and we asked them, what problems are you facing? What things have you been going through? I mean, then especially with COVID, fighting a pandemic on top of an epidemic. And that's how we came up. It wasn't just me and Kenny or me and Kenny and Matt that came up with this platform. It was the people, okay, real people with real experiences. And so then we had this idea, since we dropped the vote recovery platform, because everybody was like, well, what does it mean to vote recovery? Recovery is not a candidate on the ballot. How do we know which candidates are for recovery or against recovery? We found out that a lot of people don't want to do their own research of that. So we decided to host this nonpartisan event. And it's nonpartisan because, keep in mind, we invited every candidate, Republican and Democrat, like every candidate, because while it's a nonpartisan event, recovery is a bipartisan issue that every candidate should be addressing. And so we have a great lineup of speakers, candidates from all across the state. There are federal and state candidates that are running, and we are going to be having a vote recovery candidate discussion with them today. And I want to highlight the fact that these candidates that showed up, the people that didn't show up, they didn't even respond back to the emails. Like, we sent out this email to everyone inviting them. The other ones, they didn't even respond back. So I just want to highlight that the people that, okay, a lot of people in recovery, we are doers. The doers be doing, and people that show up are the people that are going to get our attention. And anybody, because they understand that our voices matter. Jenny, we have just a couple more minutes, or we can go ahead and let Sam take off, or.
Yeah, we ready? Yeah, let's turn it all over to Sam.
Okay. Well, I thank you very much for creating this project and giving candidates the chance to show up and offer themselves to be accountable to the nothing about us without us principle. So I'm really eager to talk with you and answer questions and show you that I have spent time creating ways to include people in recovery in the process of implementing recovery policy in West Virginia, and I'm committed to doing that if I win my race as Attorney General. And the good news is my race is very close, so I need every last vote, and I hope I can earn it. I'm a ninth generation West Virginian. I'm a labor lawyer. I work in constitutional law, working mostly representing coal miners, people in recovery. I have sued governments in West Virginia to ensure adequate protection of the homeless, of the school children who have rights against the state to receive an equitable public education. That means not only curriculum, but also social support services. So I've had a career that ranges across a wide spectrum of public interest legal advocacy. And I also worked for our former U.S. Senator Robert C. Byrd the last several years that he was in the federal legislature in the United States Senate. And when I worked for Senator Byrd back around 2010, the U.S. Congress enacted what is known as the Affordable Care Act, along with several other pieces of federal legislation that changed our approach to recovery and changed the nature and the extent of the federal government's commitment to bringing resources to people in recovery. The biggest issue in my race is that our current Attorney General, Patrick Morrisey, has filed a lawsuit that will take away health insurance from hundreds of thousands of West Virginians, including what we estimate are about 50,000 people in recovery who receive, most of our recovery services in West Virginia are in some form or fashion underwritten and paid for by the federal healthcare dollars that Mr. Morrisey, my opponent, is trying to take away. So I say we have to do three things generally on substance use and recovery in West Virginia. Number one, the Attorney General must litigate against the responsible companies. Number two, and you know, Mr. Morrissey was a lobbyist for the pain pill business. He has really sold us out when it comes to suing and recovering damages for all the suffering that the pain pill industry has caused in West Virginia. That's job number one for the lawyer for the state, the Attorney General. But number two, protect those federal health care dollars. There's no way that we can bring in enough money to fund a meaningful recovery program across West Virginia if we relinquish the federal health care dollars that Mr. Morrissey is trying to take away from us in West Virginia. And number three, I want to see our Attorney General promote a culture of long-term recovery. And you know what that means far better than I do. But I have learned from my clients, from my peers, from other lawyers, from people in recovery throughout my career that the two biggest barriers to success with long-term recovery are the stigma and the unaffordability of treatment. So during my career, I have written, I've educated lawyers around West Virginia about the rights of people in recovery. I've published, I've lectured at the law school in Morgantown. I have a law review article a couple of years ago, which I published together with a law professor from WVU, advocating for the rights of people in recovery. And what are those rights? They are the rights to receive support in public housing, fair access to public benefits, especially including vocational rehabilitation and real support, getting back in the workforce, back with your family as you emerge from rehabilitation and try to regain a foothold in life and succeed with long-term recovery. So housing, public benefits, specifically voc rehab, and also, people in recovery have rights in the job market. The same under our human rights law. People in recovery are acknowledged to have a disease, just like diabetes, epilepsy, or any other disease that requires employers to provide reasonable accommodations so that you have a fair, even footing. Nobody's asking for special preferential treatment, just the same reasonable accommodations that any other diseased American benefits from as they try to hold down a job while honoring their own medical needs and their own recovery process. So those are my three priorities: promoting long-term recovery and using the Attorney General's office, the Civil Rights Division, which is managed by the Attorney General, and the local human rights commissions to push for the rights of people in long-term recovery. And I'll say more about that, but save the federal health care dollars and really litigate to recover what our people are owed from the pain pill business. So I'm glad to answer questions. I could go on. There's a lot of important content here in my race. I hope I can earn your support and am eager for a conversation.
That was awesome. Yeah, that was really good. Let's see. We're going to hit on the vote. We're just going to ask some back and forth real quick. I'll ask one and then Kenny will ask one, and we only have a couple minutes in between the next candidates. You really hit on equal access. You hit on reducing stigma. All those are part of our vote recovery platform, listening to people in recovery. What about harm reduction?
Well, most of the harm reduction in West Virginia, where it exists, is, in my understanding and experience, is executed by our community health centers. The federal healthcare law, the Affordable Care Act, provides a great deal of funding for what they call federally qualified health centers. You're talking about, clinics you deal with all across West Virginia. And of course, public health departments as well. So the state is active in that area. And, I think that the federal healthcare dollars are a critical component of preserving those services.
Yes, thank you. Kenny?
In line with one of the things on our platform of multiple pathways, what could you possibly do to ensure that medically aided recovery, whether it's faith-based, all the different pathways to ensure, people get the help that they need can be given, as you said, an equal footing throughout the state.
People in recovery who suffer discrimination because of their substance use disorder or the stigma or the misperceptions that surround it have the right to go to court, to circuit court, seek redress for damages that they suffer, but perhaps more importantly, people who have concerns about equity as they go through long-term recovery can take their concerns and complaints to the State Human Rights Commission, which is just an administrative agency comprised of West Virginians. And frankly, we should have people in recovery on the Human Rights Commission at the state level. And they can also go to the local human rights commissions. And we have many municipalities around West Virginia who have their own human rights commission. And people who are promoting long-term recovery should seek for people in recovery to have a seat on the local municipal human rights commissions, so that when cases about inequitable services or discrimination or whatnot are presented to those local commissions, that you've got people in recovery who are hearing and deciding those cases and issuing, establishing case law on the local human rights commissions. I think that's a good way. There's a state forum in the State Human Rights Commission, and then there are all these municipal forums, and then you can bring in also the Human Rights Commissions, state and local level. They do more than resolve disputes. They can hold conferences, they can have convenings, they can bring the faith community with the medical community and the MAT community and all the others for dialogue. They have a great bully pulpit convening power, and they have a statute behind them, so it makes it clear to the public that we're having this conversation because people in recovery are an important part of our society. We want to honor them. We want to help them to fulfill the goal to be productive citizens and succeed with a lifetime goal of long-term recovery. So I would point people towards the State Human Rights Commission and the local human rights commissions, and of course the Attorney General is the lawyer that propounds cases in front of that commission. So we'll be a partner every step of the way in lifting up voices and carrying forward the conversation about equity.
If I could ask one quick question, hopefully I didn't miss it while I was trying to keep up with the background stuff, but jumping back to harm reduction for a minute, I know there are some counties and some municipalities who have enacted ordinances to ban harm reduction from happening in their counties. Is that something that could be addressed at the state level? To be honest, I have a federal grant, and I had a conversation with my project officer about that. If we were going to get more harm reduction money and the community tried to stop it, that the federal government might get involved. But is that something that could be dealt with at the state level to prevent municipalities? Is that something like an attorney general issue, or is that a legislature issue?
This is a cultural issue around this issue. Okay, so there's a legal element, there's a legislative element. The attorney general very well may be involved in a variety of ways. The attorney general may be called upon when there is a question about the legality of state action, including at the local level. Parties who are affected can call on the attorney general for an advisory opinion about what the law prohibits or allows. And so that's an important role of the attorney general, providing advisory opinions to the public, to the agencies of the state on complex and difficult issues. This is a perfect example where the attorney general can be a partner in promoting better cultural awareness, better legal clarity, and I would certainly want to do that. And I think you got to think about this issue on all fronts. Work with the legislators, work with your state and local officials, the attorney general, local office holders. In our experience in the city of Charleston, when you bring everybody together around a long table and make them talk to each other about how we're going to resolve this, sometimes the first conversation doesn't yield the resolution, but this stuff requires ongoing dialogue, and I would want to be a part of it. And I think if we have the dialogue, we're on track to progress.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you.
We have to get Danielle in here because she has a meeting at 6:30. But thank you so much for coming.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thanks
Take
for
care.
being here, Sam.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Before
Sam,
we
for your
bring
time.
Danielle in, I do want to let people know, in case they're watching and trying to log in, that right now, basically, our on deck circle is full. So, but as people drop out, other candidates will be able to log in.
Yeah.
And there she is.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to jump right into this. Thank you guys so much for the invite. I appreciate each of you sharing your truth. I am Delegate Danielle Walker, representing District 51, Monongalia County. And I am here because I stand with you. I see you. I respect your truths. I am still understanding your journey. I am on the health committee. I am on prevention and treatment of substance abuse. There was a disconnect when I first put my name on the ballot. I didn't understand addiction, let alone recovery. It's not that I had barriers and stigmas around it, but it was because I hadn't accepted some of my own truth. My first husband died because of addiction. Now, yes, he had a heart attack. Yes, his heart stopped. Yes, he died in his mother's home. But it was because of opioid abuse. Back in 2005, right after Hurricane Katrina and Rita, I lost more than a home. I lost my best friend. And it was after going to an event with both of my boys that I call my kings, and them actually listening to Matt saying that, no, this is not an opioid crisis. This is an addiction crisis. And because I have such a profound relationship with my boys, I sat in my chair crying. And I said, I don't get it. My children are ill. My youngest has been on Valium since the age of 4. With us moving to this great mountain state, we were finally able to wean him off. I don't understand how someone is willing to do that. And it was my 2 sons who said, Mama, no one's willing. Everybody's going through something. Those physicians gave our dad all those prescriptions. Your insurance chose to pay for it. That jump-started my wanting to know. I just didn't want to lead with the why. I wanted to lead with the who's. I stayed in Matt's inbox. He probably got annoyed from me. I heard about Kenny. It was an honor to meet him a couple of weeks ago. And I'm here to tell you that this is what we need in this state. We need to break those barriers and those stigmas. We need transitional services. When we have one person going through recovery, we need the whole family going through recovery. We need the whole neighborhood going through recovery. We need the whole employer going through recovery. We need the whole church going through recovery with that person. I had a different part of addiction, and it was allowing myself codependency on people by never saying no. I couldn't even complete the program because of the needs of my family. But I appreciate at least starting the program. So what will we do? I am proud of the bumper sticker that sits on the back of my car that says I carry naloxone. I carry it in my car, I carry it in my purses, but most importantly, I have it in my office in Charleston. It is in room suite 233E because I rather have it than not. One of my colleagues or a teenager overdoses on my watch. And that means that everyone should feel the same way. Why would you let any human, any mountaineer die on your watch? I'm going to allow you guys to ask me any questions. And while we're listening to this conversation, we need to listen to hear and let these people be truth tellers and have those uncomfortable conversations. We need to make sure we're thinking about the children in the foster care systems. We need to make sure that mental health is at the prominence of this. We have all kind of different programs through Medicaid. If you have cancer, you can get Medicaid with no strings attached. Well, you know what? We need the same thing for addiction and recovery services. So any question you guys may have, I have about 5 minutes.
Dan, just want thank you for your time. And know you're busy out there trying to finish up your campaign. With as you talk about in recovery and the barriers kind of thing, what do you feel is the possible connection and the help that can be done for reentry services from correctional facilities for those that are in recovery while they are incarcerated in the state?
I visit the jails and the prison systems. And I truly feel that we need to have more public servants visiting the jails and the prison systems. But I also feel that it is the responsibility of this state, when these folks are not only still choosing to stay in West Virginia, but in whatever state that they are going to, that we have some kind of program federally through Medicaid, that these people have Medicaid to continue their recovery. You are letting someone who has been in a very controlled environment, and everybody deserves a second, a third, a fourth, and a fifth chance. I'm not here to judge, but we need to make sure we keep that same energy when that person goes back home. And I didn't say to a house, I said to a home. And it doesn't stop when you get out of the halfway house. And it doesn't stop when you get that job. We need to have this Medicaid program for a minimum of 2 years. We invest in those who's going to come back and invest in these communities, because you're the person that the high schoolers and the middle schoolers want to speak to, not me. Because it doesn't matter what policies I introduce, they may not even move on the floor. But it's going to be that same tween or teen that's going to understand and listen to your words. And it's going to stay carried with them. I feel that we should have an addiction recovery caucus. We got a food caucus. We got a tech caucus. So let's start organizing that, because we need an addiction and a recovery caucus. You putting me in a committee meeting for prevention and treatment of substance abuse is one thing, but you keep saying that we have an epidemic here, but I'm not seeing no caucus. Let's make it happen.
Oh my gosh. You just made me cry, and like I don't have any questions to ask. Like Danielle Walker, mic drop, walk away, because she just laid it down and told it what it was. And thank you so much for getting so personal.
Yeah, I don't have any questions either, but I would like to thank you for your advocacy, not just for us, but for other populations that are marginalized and dehumanized. In particular, I'm thinking about the LGBTQ community, who's overrepresented in the addiction population by 200 to 300%. Because of the trauma that they face. A lot of them find solace in chemicals. So thank you. I would like to say that earlier, while we were waiting, I actually pushed the mute button on Danielle Walker, and I think I'm the first person that's probably ever been able to mute Danielle Walker, because you cannot stop her from telling her truth and everybody else's.
Well, I appreciate it. Make sure.
I really
Okay,
appreciate
Robin. Robin
Daniel's
Cutler,
time.
I see you with your LOL backstage. I appreciate each and every one of you. You know, every time I end it this way. Let's do this dedication to one another, to those folks that are watching. On a count of 3, if we can say one love, I would appreciate it. Love your neighbor. One love. Love your neighbors that are in recovery. One love. Be kind. Humankind. One love. You guys have a good night. I got to get to my other 2 Zoom calls.
All right. Thanks for being here, Danielle. All right. So who do we have next up?
Apologies.
You okay?
Yeah, she made me cry. Oh my gosh.
She has that impact.
We have Paula Jean coming up.
So next up, we have Paula Jean Swearengin, candidate for the United States Senate. And I'm going to go ahead and bring her on. And there she is.
Hey y'all, Danielle
Hey,
made me
Paula.
cry. I got Kathleen Barker. Y'all can't see her sitting right beside me, and she's like, yes, and she's crying here.
Thank you so much for coming, Paula.
Thank you for having me. This issue is really, really important to me. You know, I don't know very many West Virginians that have not been impacted one way or another to addiction, and I've lost friends and family to addiction. I lost my little brother this year. Losing my little brother was like a gut check for me this year. I've lost, my older sister was an addict. And, I've worked since 2018, 2019, and even now working within our communities and community leaders trying to figure out how to solve this problem. And, I don't suffer from addiction myself, but I know we can learn from each other. And, with everything that I've learned, the most important aspect of this is people need to have ownership of their care. We need people that are actually going to fight for recovery. My opponent, her third top donor is the pharmaceutical industry. How can we trust somebody that helped create this problem, solve this problem? And it's one of the reasons that I'm running for office. All these problems are systemic. We know that people, we have to quit destigmatizing addiction. We have to invest in harm reduction. We have to invest in mental health services. We have to invest in long-term recovery solutions and making sure that long-term recovery centers are in every corner of the state and they have state and federal funding to support it. I'm an unforgiving advocate for Medicare for all for various reasons, but this is one of the biggest reasons. It's because people can also get access to care. We need to invest in integrative care and ambulatory pharmacy care. So, we can have, education on medications in the doctor's office when doctors prescribe medications. We have to make sure that people have a path, into society as part of the recovery, so they can have access to social programs, health care, all the various things that are needed. And, like I said, I'm not the end all be all. And it's important to me when we talk about all these problems and we know they're systemic, if we don't have economic diversity moving forward, it's just going to keep on tying into West Virginians being downtrodden, us being 49th and 50th in opportunity. And, if people in recovery cannot get jobs if the jobs are not there. So there's so many things that I want to do for West Virginia, but my top 3 things are economic diversity, ending the addiction epidemic, and working with leaders across the state to end the epidemic, as well as Medicare for all, making sure everybody has health care. One of my biggest goals is we've been working in the front lines of our community, solving our problems forever. And we don't have a seat at the table in Washington, D.C. This is probably one of the biggest job interviews I ever had, to be a public servant. If you would have told me 20 years ago as an activist fighting for clean water, clean air, and economic diversity in our state, that I'd be the Democratic nominee for United States Senate, I probably would have told you were crazy. But we have to fight this damn hard to survive in our state. So it's past time that West Virginians have a seat at the table in Washington, D.C. And so I'm not going to go there to be a savior. I want to make host roundtables, and I want to bring people in to help me write legislation that I introduce, and also continue to work within our community so we can solve this problem. One of us cannot solve all of our problems. It's government 101. You can't pass legislation unless you know you have votes, but also know that we are very resilient in our state, and we know how to survive, and we've learned about survival, and all the work that I've seen y'all do solidifies that. And no matter what, this movement continues to move forward. But the biggest goal is to put the government back into the hands of the people. We had over 93 candidates this cycle in West Virginia to swear off corporate PAC money, and ordinary people just like, like myself, that just wants to survive. And we just want to make sure that future generations have a chance here, and we're not 49th and 50th in opportunity anymore, and we don't lead in drug overdose deaths in the country. And 43 of those candidates won, and every Democratic nominee right now is a woman, and we don't take corporate PAC dollars. So the biggest difference between all of these candidates and some of our incumbents is that we are going to be holding to the people. And part of that is, public service is making sure that people have a seat at the table and writing legislation that impacts their daily lives. And I can't tell you I know everything about addiction because I can't answer every question. That's why it's important to raise voices like yours and making sure that you do have a seat at the table so we can solve these problems.
Oh man, I'm going to cry through the next, I don't know how many hours. Thank you so much, Paula. I'm the third candidate. I've already cried twice. Kenny, do you have any questions? What you want to address?
Okay. We deal a lot with stigmatizing language, right? And in your speech, when you get ingrained with picking up stigmatizing language, you hear things and it's like, oh, you shouldn't say that. Or, oh, you shouldn't say that. Or we'd rather have you say this. How would you approach bringing the whole destigmatizing and barriers, biases to Washington around people that, quite frankly, have shown patterns of not really caring about the language that they use in certain things and how they use people?
Well, this year I was even corrected by somebody else that was working in long-term recovery because I've been learning since 2018, what just to say, and I was even corrected. So I think we learn every day. And as a candidate, I actually had a live stream and brought her on to be like, she's teaching me stuff. And somebody's like, I've never seen that before for a candidate to say that they admitted that they were wrong. But, I would rather have somebody to make honest mistakes and learn instead of be pre-positioned in my demise. And the thing about it is we have people that are invested like myself that are willing to learn and figure out solutions, and let's all working together. But again, these people are corporate servants, and they're servants to special interest and lobbyists. My opponent, my campaign is 100% people funded, and the less than 6% of her donor base is individuals. So that's what they're doing in Washington, D.C. They're being corporate servants instead of people servants, and we can change the whole narrative and the whole dynamic and change stigma if we just sit down with if we're able to sit down with our representatives. You don't have to get arrested in my office to talk to me if I go to DC. It won't happen. You won't have to fly paper airplanes over top my door just to get my attention. I give out my phone number now, 304-894-7472. This is about making sure that these people know if they're not going to do their jobs, we're coming after them. And it's not going to end today with this election or November 3rd. It's moving forward. We are building a movement, a long-term movement to make sure that these people are held accountable, because we are literally dying and starving here. We've been treated like collateral damage. I'm a coal miner's daughter and granddaughter. I've been to more funerals than I have family reunions. And, my opponent, she's a mother and grandmother. I don't know how she sleeps at night. We have to make sure that we put the government back into the hands of the people. This is about survival for us. And it's about making sure that we put people in place that will actually listen to us and work with us. They're better to serve us because they ain't done nothing for us.
Yes, we are dropping mics every candidate, like end game done. Oh my gosh, Paula, thank you so much. I don't want to keep you too long because I know you have another Zoom that you have to get to. And I'm so glad that you were able to come out and speak with us this evening. I seen you yesterday. I was really glad I got to see you there, and I got to see you on Zoom today. Well, it's not Zoom, it's StreamYard, but thank you so much. And we will be fighting together to do.
You guys, all your hard work, I've seen it firsthand. You are saving lives, and I know it's hard. I know it's hard for you to fight for the funding. I've seen it firsthand, and I know how hard you struggle. I'm just a candidate right now. As an incumbent, I can do more, but I'm still always going to be here to work in the front lines of our communities no matter what. So if you ever need my help at all, or if you need my network or anything moving forward, no matter what, I'm here.
Thank you so much.
All right, y'all have a good evening.
Apology, y'all. Man, we're having some good discussions. Yes. We're
I
running.
am highly impressed.
I'm very pleased. I just want to go ahead and announce we're behind schedule, of course. But we have Hillary. It's worth it. I'm cool. We have Hillary Turner coming in. Hey, Hillary.
Hey, y'all. How are y'all?
We're good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Sorry, I might have a little background noise with the family and everything, but
So if you want, you can go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we can have a little bit of back and forth.
sure, yeah. So my name is Hillary Turner, and I'm running for U.S. Congress here in West Virginia's 3rd District. It was great to see what Danielle Walker had to say and Paula Jean. It's kind of hard to follow them up, but I really appreciated that they shared some of their personal stories. I can share some of mine with, the issue of addiction and overdose. Last August, I lost my sister. So that, it's so interesting, I think, and shocking, and, just that there's been so many of us in West Virginia, and especially this year candidates that have personally lost close family members to this crisis. And so this is also a really important issue for me that, I want to do anything that I can to support recovery.
Oh, Hillary, thank you for sharing that with us. And I think that it's important, something that we in the recovery community, we talk a lot about the importance of sharing our stories and our public narrative for change, because and it's important that the candidates today have shared personal things like that, because that people need to know, like, you're not just a person on a flyer or on a droplet. Like, you are a real person with real experiences and real stuff that you've dealt with. I have kids still screaming in my background too, Hillary, don't worry.
Yeah, I agree. I think it wasn't that many years ago when if somebody lost a family member to addiction, that they would have hid that, they would have buried that information. It would have been, and we all knew, all of us knew what was going on. 25-year-olds don't die from heart attacks and things like that. So it's really nice to have candidates here who have had, those experiences and are willing to be open about that.
Can I ask you, if, and it's okay, you can say no, if you don't want to answer, like, since the passing of your sister, like, has that changed your outlook on everything, or it just makes you wants you to advocate more and learn more? Or some people it makes hard, some people it puts a fire under them and wants to do stuff, or some people don't want to talk about it. Like, where are you at with that, with it only being a year ago?
Yes. So it has changed my perspectives and made me, wish that I had tried to do more. Seeing her on that path, and it's hard to talk about. But she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and she was on lithium. And so, I've been an advocate for universal health care for a long time. But I definitely support Medicare for all, and, making sure that we include mental health treatment and therapy as a part of that. But just experiencing that personally, and then knowing the numbers of people in our state that have lost someone, I've it hasn't really changed my political perspectives, but it just hit a lot deeper, really, on what families go through, and the importance of and the urgency of addressing this crisis. Saving lives. The importance of, the sooner we address this, the sooner we pass legislation, to fund addiction treatment, to pass Medicare for all, make sure people are getting the health care and the mental health care that they need. And as soon as we address all of the root causes of all these problems, we're gonna that's that many lives that we're gonna save, and families that we're gonna save from that heartache.
Yes. And just to echo on what you just oh, did you want to go, Matt?
No, I just accidentally dropped Hillary out for a second. Still learning the things, pushed the wrong button, things went south.
Thank you so much for sharing your personal experience. And our platform it circles around community inclusion, and that means all people and all pathways, but that also means people with mental health and co-occurring disorders and all of that stuff. And I love that you guys have been hitting on tonight that we need to help educate our family members also when it comes to how to deal with substance use disorders, so how they can help their families. That's all. If anybody else has any questions.
That was I think she did a really excellent job. I just really been really surprised at how you see people campaigning in these commercials or passing out flyers or during town hall meetings and stuff like that, and sometimes they don't come across as personable, or they don't come across as really relate to the issues that the majority of the people in the state really go through on a daily basis, whether it's somebody that suffers from a substance use disorder or going through it themselves, or having a friend of the family. It's really, that's the main thing of our platform, is that all of us together, it affects every aspect, from the kid going to school to the grandmother raising, her grandchildren now. And it's really great to see candidates that, like Hillary, that come in and say, look, this affects me personally because of this, and this is why it's important to me. Not because, you can get a bunch more people to vote for you, but you have a personal invested interest in making sure that we get this state, as healthy as we possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a big reason why we just need more normal people running for office and coming into these positions where we have the job of representing our communities. Because, I think for a long time we've had people that have been out of touch with the day-to-day struggles, whether it's paying our bills, or, seeing family members struggling, with, financially or with mental health, that can feed into the addiction crisis. I think, a big part of it is addressing poverty, and recognizing that when we have our material needs met, we're going to be a lot less likely to be hit with stressors that push people into addiction or make it harder for them to get out of addiction. So, I think, let's talk about some of that, raising our wages, universal basic income, protecting Social Security, protecting people's benefits, making sure that, veterans have their benefits and veterans have the care that they need, getting out of service, all of these things are factors that play a role on stressor, like reducing people's stressors. So, yeah, I mean, I think we all know that our working class and our middle class families are being squeezed, and we've been put in a vice, and we're under so much pressure now that we are seeing the results of that with our addiction crisis, and with a lot of indicators that we see, from homelessness, to domestic violence, to disease, and all sorts of indicators. So solving those root causes is another thing that we need to be able to talk about and really have conversations and address.
Yes.
That's awesome. Really appreciate
We
your
need
time.
jobs. We need healthcare. We need equal access. We need more money. Keep going on. Oh my gosh, I love that there's so many females. We're getting to some male candidates also, right? But I love that there are so many powerful females running for powerful positions. Like, I am so happy and to even be a part of this discussion and anything else with the rest of you guys. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for having me.
Take care.
Take care.
All right. So next, Kathy Kunkel. And we'll go ahead and bring Kathy on. There she is. And Kathy has the oops, I accidentally hit her.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Mm-hmm.
Great,
Kathy,
fantastic.
I think, has the weirdest congressional district by far in West Virginia. We've got several of our largest metropolitan areas from Martinsburg, Charleston, Huntington, and then some extremely rural areas where have complete lack of recovery capital.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to clarify, actually, Huntington is in the 3rd district.
I'm sorry.
Internals. No. It's the districts are very strange. I will agree with you on that. And yeah, I mean, listening to the other candidates on here, I really count myself lucky that I haven't lost anyone in my family to addiction. But I've certainly been very aware of the issues. I've been learning a lot over the last several years, and I've been involved in the community here in Charleston. I co-founded a group back in 2017 called Rise Up West Virginia that advocates for healthcare for all, and also for better services for folks struggling with addiction in the community. And in talking to folks, working with folks in recovery here in Charleston, really have become even more aware of the importance of reducing stigma, fighting the stigma around addiction. And to that end, I was proud to play a part in helping to organize an art show around recovery here in Charleston last summer in 2019 to put a different face on how people look at the issue of addiction and recovery. And throughout the campaign, throughout this strange congressional district that I traveled through, unfortunately, one of the unifying factors across urban and rural and suburban areas is talk of addiction and the lack of services for both treatment and recovery. I've met with folks working on many different aspects of the issue, visiting recovery homes, treatment centers, talking to folks in recovery and service providers to get a better understanding of the barriers and what folks are working on. And what I've learned first and foremost is that there is a lot of good work going on. So many people who are working really hard with limited resources to try to tackle this problem in our communities. And we need better federal leadership on this issue. We need a long-term federal commitment of serious money for prevention, treatment, and long-term recovery. And particularly around prevention, I've been very interested in looking at what Iceland has done to reduce teen substance abuse very substantially over the last couple of decades by investing significant resources in after school and extracurricular programs for youth, which obviously pays dividends beyond just reducing substance abuse. And obviously, as the other candidates have said, this is an issue that goes beyond just more resources for treatment and recovery, even though that's obviously needed. But I, like the other candidates, I support Medicare for all, universal healthcare system to make sure that cost is not a barrier for folks being able to access the healthcare they need. We need to expand mental health services in the state. And we need to be more aggressive about combating poverty. I mean, it's not a coincidence that we are both one of the poorest states in the country and one of the states that's been hardest hit by the addiction epidemic. And so our platform also includes things like raising the minimum wage, again, healthcare for all, better funding for folks struggling with addiction, access to childcare, all of those things that would really support working families in our state. So I'll leave it there. As I said, I'm continuing to learn about this issue, and as a congressperson, I will continue to be learning. And so I welcome folks to reach out to me anytime during the remainder of the campaign, which is very short, but hopefully we'll be in office, and we'll welcome that too.
Everybody's waiting on everybody to talk. I'm sorry, I dropped the ball on that one.
Actually, if I could jump in for a second, just before we start grilling Kathy with all kinds of questions, I noticed on the page where people are watching that some have been asking questions, and to be honest, we just didn't see them till now. So some candidates have come and gone. That's not the candidates' fault. The candidates ignoring you. It's just that we didn't see candidates on that stream because we're new to this from the technological point of view, and just completely missed watching that.
I thought Abby texted me and said that she was watching the comment stream, and I was like, somebody is. Sorry, guys. we're learning. So anybody that's asking questions to the candidates, we can't see them or we haven't been watching them, and we apologize.
I can't see the comments. Otherwise,
I think it's on the Facebook. It's on the Facebook live stream.
Yeah.
Something that I love that you hit on, Kathy, was that you came in and you were like, I and myself have not been affected by substance use disorder, but I am willing to listen to people and to learn from people and to move forward to make policy and change for the better for these people. And that's something we're really, we said it in the introduction, we follow the mantra, nothing about us without us. Our voices and our lived experience, like, it matters when it comes to what's going on in the communities and in the states and in the region. And I just really appreciate your honesty coming in when you said that you're still learning about everything, because a lot of candidates, not any of ours that's on any of this, but I mean candidates that you've seen in the past, like, they are unteachable. They act like they can't learn anything more and that they already know it all. So that's something that I very, very much value in a candidate, is that they are always willing to learn more.
Yeah. And Kathy has actually been at our recovery center a couple times in her travels. And just to basically mirror what you were saying, that it's refreshing to have somebody come who wants to learn, who understands that this is a problem, and wants to find out what the solutions are from the point of impacted people, not from the point of view of people who think they know. Because it's unfortunately, because of the stigma that involves that surrounds addiction, a lot of people feel comfortable expressing opinions that they wouldn't do if it was some other disease. I mean, everybody wants to tell us what the solution is for addiction, but you don't hear that happening, with cancer patients or with somebody with heart disease. Joe Baloney sitting down at the local diner isn't, expounding on what he thinks we need to do in the world of oncology, but they sure think that they know what to do in the world of addiction.
Yeah, that's very true. And, I thank you for, excuse me, for emphasizing that this is a disease, because I think that is itself a perspective that is too often or a reality that is too often lost in the conversation. And yeah, I mean, that's generally my philosophy on any issue, is the people that are closest to the problem, have the most lived experience with it, are the ones who understand how to solve it. And, like I said, I count myself lucky that this hasn't touched my family yet, but, all I can do is be very willing to listen and learn from your experiences.
Thank you.
I don't think I have any other questions. Abby's like, I'm sending you questions. No, Abby, don't send me questions. I don't really have any other questions.
I got the stream now on my phone as well, so I'm like watching for questions now from people to see what they're saying.
I want to let the listeners know that we have a long list of candidates in a short amount of time, because a lot of them have other stuff to do. So we won't be able to answer everybody's question back and forth, because we're like passing them in and out back and forth so they can go to their next stuff. But we will be looking back through all the questions, and I'm sure that they will too, because most of them shared it on their pages and stuff. So it's not like they won't be able to see that stuff. Kathy, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
And we're in the end of the race here, like hammering down.
Yeah, well, we definitely appreciate your time, because we know how valuable it is, especially this close to the election itself.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you guys for doing this. It's really important. So happy to be here.
All right. You take care. Good luck.
You too. Thank you.
All right. So next up, we have Natalie Tennant, our candidate for Secretary of State.
Hey, they put me on, you guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
All righty.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All righty. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I almost want to, can I tell my Natalie Tennant story?
Yes.
That would really thank you guys for coming.
Oh. Oh, wait a minute. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Recovery? Hang on. You're not going to believe what I'm doing here.
Flying a plane, maybe?
It feels like it, doesn't it? Okay. I was just on another Zoom. So, how bad is this shot? You guys are really professional at this, and I've kind of just...
this is the first time we've done this, so we're liable to cut you off, throw you out, something. We'll bring you back.
Well, as long as you can see me.
I have, like, my favorite political candidate story was when Natalie was Secretary of State before. I went down to the Capitol for some sort of meeting, West Virginia Association of Addiction Counselors, and I'm walking around lost, looking for the room that I'm supposed to be in, and see this woman. She's carrying her shoes, wearing her tennis shoes, and she looks at me. And obviously, I must look lost, and she says, "Can I help you find something?" And I said, "Yeah, well, I'm looking for this room because I have this meeting." And she's, "Okay, well, what you do is you go down this hallway and you go here and you go left and you go right." And she must have seen the same glazed look come over my face. So she said, come with me, and walked me clear to the other end of the Capitol to the room I was supposed to be. And at first I wasn't sure. It didn't occur to me who this was, but just like 3 minutes later, I'm sitting in this meeting and I'm like, holy crap, that was the Secretary of State. Just took some moron to clear to the other end of the building. So I think to me, that really speaks to what kind of person she is. She didn't just, ignore somebody that was lost. She didn't just point them like, go this way until you get lost again and then ask somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what happens in this.
That was my first Natalie Tennant contact.
And so now you're a pro at getting around the Capitol, aren't you?
Not so much.
No.
Better, but not great.
Right. And things have changed so much in the Capitol. I mean, that's, I wasn't there through all the construction and things like that. So, I get back in and I can get back around there again. But it still is like, there's sometimes when I'm up on the top steps or the top floor and I'm walking, it's like, I'm at a dead end, but it's not really a dead end. You go clear to there and then you turn left. I mean, it's a great maze to be a part of.
Oh, welcome.
So thank you. I want to apologize I'm sitting in a parking lot. I was just on with some Marshall University students over here on my iPad, and I knew I had to check in early with you all, so I kept you on my phone over here. I have a Little Caesars and Radio Shack over here, Rent-A-Center in front of me. So it tells you that I'm at the Emily Drive shopping plaza with Kroger beside me. But this is 5 days before an election, and you're my second of 3 Zoom calls. And I just thought this one was very important to be on. So kind of direct me. I haven't had the opportunity to hear what other folks have talked about. So tell me if you just want to take questions or if you want me to talk first, and tell me what to do here.
I think what we might have you do is kind of give your position on, what the recovery platform means to you, and what are you going to do to help and advocate enacting policies. What it is that you feel that the recovery community needs to know in order to basically decided whether or not they want to elect you into office.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what, if any, roles the Secretary of State's office? Because it's kind of not really connected.
Or even if you have your own personal experiences, some of the candidates have been sharing about that also.
Okay. Kind of direct me as a lot of interesting questions. So first, I think I probably should just explain a little bit about what the Secretary of State's office does for when I start going into, and we can do this, and here's an idea, and this, that I found that I do that, and people their heads start spinning because they're like, wait a minute, what does the Secretary of State's office do? There are some major divisions in the office, and the biggest is, excuse me, the Business and Licensing Division. If you want to start a business, chances are your first stop is the Secretary of State's office. And so we register businesses. We register notaries. And you all know how important notaries are. Sometimes we take those for granted, but we need them to buy a car, a house, or many life events that we need a notary for. So they're registered in the Secretary of State's office, as are charities. Nonprofits are registered with marriage celebrants and private investigators and sports agents. So that's that area, Business and Licensing Division of the Secretary of State's office. Another division is the Secretary to State Government. Secretary of State is the administration side, where filing maybe proclamations of documents of state agencies that have meetings, and that they're open to the public. They're supposed to be. And so the Open Meetings Act requires that they file with the Secretary of State's office, so when the meeting is and what the agenda is. So that's very important. And then the big one right now that everyone's talking about is the chief election official as the Secretary of State, who oversees the the regulations and the uniformity of elections, because the county clerks administer the elections in the county for voting for the ballots and the registering. They authorize the registration. Like, I put together online voter registration as a uniform platform for people to be able to register to vote more easily, like 5 years ago. And so it's the counties that always have the ultimate authority to make sure someone is registered. So those are kind of like the three divisions in the Secretary of State's office. So now when we talk about, well, what could the Secretary really do in with the recovery community here? And I've been thinking about this. I focus a lot on businesses and helping small businesses, because the big businesses are going to be okay. They have their legions of lawyers and accountants. It's the small business owner who may need that extra help, because it may be just them or one other person. And so if we can make doing business with the small business owner easier in terms of what forms, doing things online. I really pushed online when I was Secretary of State for 8 years. I modernized and streamlined the office. I mean, that's what I'm known for, and saved money and gave it back. And so I think that when we talk about small business, here's an example, and how we could work in helping the recovery community is for veterans. I worked with Republicans and Democrats to pass a veterans business waiver, that if you're a veteran and you wanted to start a business, we waived the startup fee and we waived the annual report for the next 4 years. It's a potential savings of more than $200, and it makes a difference when you're starting out in a business. And hundreds of veterans have used it in the last 5 years. What I want to do is expand that to military spouses. It's almost just a common sense thing, because military spouses face a staggering unemployment rate of 24% nationwide. So we should be focusing on that. So I'm also thinking as folks are getting their lives back in order, and they have this skill, and it may have been a skill to help them to fortify them and keep them strong through their recovery. That what could we do for them in terms of starting a business? Or if they're 30 years and younger, we did expand that as part of the Youth Reinvestment Act, where if you're 30 years and younger, we waive the startup fee. So that's we have to make sure that people are aware of what opportunities are in the Secretary of State's office. As far as voting goes, this was a promise that I had made to several communities back in 2016. I was running for re-election, and I did not win, and I did not get reelected. But the promise that I made was that former people who were incarcerated, we would make it easier is not the word, but I had promised that I would work with judges to help the judges make sure that they inform someone who is coming out of incarceration that they get their voting rights back after parole and after probation. And a lot of folks who have been incarcerated don't know that, incarcerated with a felony conviction. They don't know that, and they were never informed of it. They were certainly informed when they were sentenced, you'll lose your voting rights, but they were never informed coming out of it. But here's also what I think we need to do. When someone is no longer incarcerated and they're back in the community, that we should look at just reinstating those voting rights. It makes it easier on the county clerks, actually, because then they don't have to figure out, is someone on probation or is someone on parole? Because my thought is, West Virginians, we give people second chances, and we appreciate if someone has served their time and it's time for them to get back in the community. And my other thought is, you're in the community, you're back into society. Why don't you deserve to have your voting rights back? And I'll tell you this, I mean, this happened, like, I knew that this was the case But on Tuesday, I was up in Wheeling at DeCarlo's Pizza. For any of you who know how great the pizza is, that DeCarlo's is. And I asked this young woman, I said, hey, are you registered to vote? Because I'd love to have your vote. And she's like she was straight out to me. She's like, I'm a felon and I can't vote. And I said, well, but you're out. I said, you still on probation or parole? And she said, yes. And I said, I am working for you. I am working for you, that here you are paying taxes, working a job, that you should be in that step to get your voting rights back. I mean, it's part of feeling human, a part of being part of society. It's a responsibility then too. You become accountable again also when you're given a responsibility and you're given a right back. It's part of accountability, I think. So those are some of the things that I've been thinking about, and certainly I don't have all the answers, but I know that when I work with folks, I just know what my attitude is. It's an attitude of like being an entrepreneur, that if I hear what we might be able to do, I build off of what someone else is doing, or we just, quite frankly, just create it ourselves. So that's what I'm willing to do if I'm fortunate enough to get back in the Secretary of State's office.
Thank you. I think that's a big thing. The letting people know that that they can vote. I get that a lot here.
Yep.
A lot of the people I work with have been incarcerated before, and a lot of them tell me that as they're leaving facilities, they're told you can't vote.
Yeah.
And
that's true.
sometimes it's hard not to wonder if they are not deliberately being disenfranchised. Because the people that are working there don't want them to vote.
I mean, I don't know if they're being
informed. Who knows whether it's intentional or not? But it's definitely an issue, and the making things easier for people to own businesses, I think, impacts people in recovery in ways that a lot of us don't think about. We're starting a couple small cottage businesses here at Opportunity House, so that we can give our people livable wage job skills. But we're also we've been working for several years now at West Virginia Wesleyan College to teach them how to open and run a business, because we have a lot of people who have skills, but they can't find a job because of their employment history. But you might not be able to get a job, but you can get an LLC and and run your own business.
And you know your product, but you just don't know paperwork either. I mean,
Right.
that's what, even Eric and I don't know if you guys know my husband, Eric Wells, but that was us too. We could shoot video and we could edit things and write stories, but daggone, I don't know if we got the right paperwork done. So, I mean, that's why I'm running again for Secretary of State.
Yeah, I think anything that we can do to make owning and running a business easier would definitely help people in recovery. We've even talked as Opportunity House about maybe doing that, using our connection to Wesleyan to start a business to help the background for other people. Because we get a lot of people who have skills. They might be great welders, they might be great roofers, but they don't know how to run a business. So if we had, other people that we could teach to train to do their payroll and pay their taxes and do all that stuff.
Isn't there something, I want to say Alderson Broadus had something, but I would bet that Wesleyan does have something already like that. Like, I don't know if it's an innovation center. WVU has like an innovation lab that might be able to help, but certainly, like, Pierpont Community and Technical Colleges play a huge role too, and might be able to do that. See, that's why I got 5 days. I got to get back in the Secretary of State's office to pull all this together.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the money would come from, but I think if we had some way to get that information out that people can vote, or when they can vote. I just took
or
all
just
of our
make
people.
It's about just making it. It does benefit the clerks who don't have to worry. I mean, that's the only, I think, when someone's released, they say they can't vote, but do they just mean because they're still on papers, or do they think forever? Because I've had people who thought forever they could never vote again. But can you just imagine what that does? I mean, how proud do we feel that we're able to vote? That, when we go either early voting, whatever it is, I mean, can you imagine?
Well, here's the thing. I know firsthand I'm currently on parole and currently can't vote, and was told by my releasing facility that I was not eligible to vote. So my question, Ms. Tennant, is you mentioned releasing the restriction on those that are on parole. Like, I work as advocating for voters' rights. I do phone banking, talk with people, work with West Virginia family of convicted people. I work part-time with the ACLU doing advocacy work and criminal reform. The part of, my kind of wheelhouse is that reentry, reform, recovery kind of thing. And so my question to you is, what would that look like? Like, what specifically? Because as far as I was, known that it was a legislative matter, that's what the West Virginia legislature said, according to statute, that until you exhaust your parole, probation, court fines, or any other court responsibilities, that you are ineligible to vote if you were convicted of a felony. Now, what exactly, because I mean, a lot of people can try and wanting to get elected, give high hopes like, oh, I could get this done and do this. But what steps would you take exactly to make that possible while you're in the Secretary of State's office?
A couple of things. You do need legislation. So we would want sponsors, obviously, Republicans and Democrats, and that's why much of the successes that I've had, or the initiatives that we've been able to pass, came with Republicans and Democrats. I mean, it's just you have to do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's great, actually, because it strengthens you. So you need sponsors from both sides. So then the legislation would just be to well, I'm not the expert in legislation, but would to strike those requirements. But in addition to you and Opportunity House and the community, I would think that I don't know. I can't imagine that county clerks would be against it. I don't think they would have they would have skin in the game, because it does, when I say it makes it easier on them, it means that there's no one who can come in. Like, if someone comes in, if for instance, if you would fill out a voter application, even a paper form, and send it in, well, no, you would have to say, you have to mark that line off that says, I'm no longer under conviction. We would just take that out that said under probation or parole. But for county clerks, there are some who have told me that it is difficult for them to have to distinguish whether someone has come off the papers or not. So I would think that they would be an advocate. And then maybe we could just get a coalition. But you're right, it's not easy. It sounds like it should be really easy, but believe me, the next 5 days, I could be criticized for what I'm saying right now, because people turn it around and like, she is going to let felons vote. I mean, that's exactly what they'll do. And all I'm saying is, no, I'm saying serve your time. But after you serve your time, West Virginians believe in second chances. I mean, if you're always going to be burdened even after you served your time, and that's not helping society. That's not helping West Virginia. If we're continuing to lay a load on someone.
There's over 154,000 formerly incarcerated West Virginians in this state, just numbers wise. And a lot of them don't know that they have the right to vote, and a lot of them don't vote because they have been disenfranchised, because part of getting out is reentry is kind of taking them aside from that. So yeah, it would take a whole lot to get that narrative changed.
Yeah, I mean, but it would be like the promise that I made there's this group in Charleston called the Tuesday Morning Group, and I think it's mostly pastors. But my promise was, hey, I will ask the judicial, they have judicial conferences, and I will ask them to allow me to speak and explain to judges, circuit judges, about what they need to be part of their narrative and their debriefing for formerly incarcerated. And that would have been, it may have brought something coming from a Secretary of State. That would be a wee little small step before we went to legislation area. But I mean, and somebody can articulate it better than I can. But what's the difference? I mean, you're back in society. You have to get a job. You have to pay taxes like these two young women. Because remember, I was up at DeCarlo's, and the second young woman, I said, "Hey, are you registered?" She goes, "No, I'm in the same situation she is." It's like, geez. I mean, are they not doing what we're asking them to do?
Yeah.
They're giving back. I mean, working in society.
Yeah. To be honest, that's something that had always turned into a circular argument. Sometimes when I ask, people will say, well, these people should never vote again. Well, why? Well, because they're felons. Well, so what does that, why don't you want them to vote? What does that hurt? Well, I don't know, because that's just the way it is. And nobody can ever, what's the point? What purpose does that serve society to take somebody's vote away?
I mean, it strengthens society if you give someone, or if they've earned it. I'm not even saying, they've earned it back. So.
All right. Anything else?
So I have work to do over the next 5 days to make sure I can get back in there. Yep.
All right. Good. Well, we definitely appreciate. Yeah, we definitely appreciate you spending time here with us at the last minute, and because I know you're just running all over the state, and so we're grateful for your time.
Yep. Oh, well, thank you. I mean, this gives us an opportunity too. I mean, I came up with some more ideas on, working with community and technical colleges and businesses and being able to get that information out, and knowing that I have a coalition that we can bring together for ideas that I've had about reenfranchisement.
Right.
And we don't even have it. I mean, this is bad. We don't even have it as bad as some states, although because Andy Bashir changed it in Kentucky, it was really strict. Iowa, I think they're changing it. And then the whole Florida thing is just
that's bad.
Sickening.
All right. Well, good luck.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, all.
All right. Thank you.
I might listen a little bit more. You're welcome.
All right. Well, who's next? We got Rusty Williams next. You guys ready for me to bring Rusty on?
Yes, I'm delegating in the background because we have candidates that are getting pushed that have to leave.
Okay. Well, there's Rusty. Let me know if we need to move anybody after this. How you doing, Rusty?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Living the dream.
Hey, that's the goal. I truly appreciate you all allowing me to participate in this conversation. I do want to say that this is probably the most important conversation going on in West Virginia right now. So again, thank you for allowing me to participate. So should I just get going, I guess? I know you're running low on time, so I'll try to be, as mindful of that as possible. My name is Rusty Williams. I'm running for the House of Delegates here in the 35th District, and I got involved in politics and in this whole arena after surviving a life-threatening cancer situation in 2012. I was diagnosed without insurance, and had to navigate that process. And it was a terrible, humiliating feeling to need emergency surgery and not have access to the coverage to get it, to make it happen. So I illegally used medical cannabis to get through chemotherapy. It kept me off of a lot of pharmaceuticals, and actually kept me off of every one of the pharmaceuticals, aside from what they gave me in, through the IV during the treatments. I didn't have to take any pain medication, any nausea medication, appetite stimulants, anything like that, because I chose to illegally use cannabis. So once I finished my treatments, I immediately got involved in the effort to end cannabis prohibition here in West Virginia. I'm proud to have built a grassroots movement responsible for getting the Medical Cannabis Act passed, although that legislation is far from perfect, far from the program that patients need it to be. We do have a foundation to build on. After the law was passed, I was appointed to the patient advocate position on the advisory board. And as soon as that happened, the floodgates opened and patients started reaching out to me from all across the state. And a lot of folks who were suffering from addiction, dealing with it in their own ways, were reaching out saying, hey, thank you. How can we get involved? Because to me, this is not just, cannabis isn't just a medicine that got me through this. This is a harm reduction tool in the toolbox. There's information and studies that show states that have implemented medical cannabis legislation, they see a dramatic reduction in opioid overdose rates the first year of implementation. And I'm not saying that we're going to legalize cannabis here and end our, the problems that we have with opioids, but I do think that harm reduction should be at the forefront of the conversation. Like so many of the candidates that have already spoken tonight, I have lost family members, I've lost friends to addiction, and this is all very personal to me. And again, I'm happy to be a part of the conversation, and I'm willing to take any questions that anybody may have.
I think real briefly, because I think a lot of people that I talk to may have questions. What exactly, if elected, what exactly would your role in the House of Delegates be? Like, what is that kind of basis in the state?
If I'm elected to represent the 35th district, I would represent, Nitro, St. Albans, South Charleston, Dunbar, Institute, Jefferson. It's a very big district, South Charleston, Canal City, but it would basically put me in a position to continue the work that I've been doing for the last decade from the hallways. I've been fighting for patients. I've dedicated my entire life to fighting for patients since I ended, since I finished my chemotherapy. And I've been very successful as an outsider. We got medical cannabis legislation passed through arguably one of the most conservative and hostile legislatures in the entire country. And last year, I also worked with the West Virginia team for insulin affordability to cap monthly insulin copays here. We introduced a bill that would have capped monthly insulin copays at $25. There was a compromise made, and the bill that was signed into law capped it at $100. But basically, I'm looking at this like, if I am elected, if I'm fortunate enough to represent the 35th district, I'm going to be able to take that advocacy and actually apply the things that I've learned from the field. You can only do so much from the hallway. If you want to change the game, you got to get in the game. So, if I'm a delegate, I'll just be able to continue what I've already been doing. When it comes to addiction, one of the things that I've noticed, at least with the tone from our legislators, I don't think they really get the whole the issue for what it is. Every year you hear delegates and people running for office saying, we're going to address the addiction epidemic. We're going to address the addiction epidemic. And then they get elected, and their only the only vehicle they seem to want to get in pertaining to this issue, they want to pass punitive policies and continue to punish people who are dealing with addiction. And when I first started looking into this, there were two books that I picked up that had a profound impact on the way I view this issue. And one of them was called Chasing the Scream by Johan Hari, and the other is called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, and it's by a doctor from Canada, Dr. Monte. And the underlying message in both of those books, it was just like, wow, it was an aha moment when I read it. But the quote, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection, really blew my mind. And when I started thinking about that, it just made so much sense. Here in West Virginia, some of the other candidates have talked about it before, but we have some of the highest addiction rates in the country. And I know there's this false narrative that we're in an opioid epidemic, but we're in an addiction epidemic. I can't drive from my house in St. Albans to Charleston, which is just a little more than 16 miles away, without passing probably 35 gambling spots. So, when you really look at it for what it is, when you're struggling to just keep a roof over your head, or, pay for childcare or keep food in the refrigerator, when you've got all of these enormous stressors pushing down on you every day, it's a natural human reaction to reach out for anything that makes you feel better. And for some people, that's drugs. Some people, it's alcohol. Some people, it's gambling. Some people, it's, a hobby, playing music, something, but everybody has something that they go to try to, just feel better, right? And I feel like if we're ever going to address the addiction epidemic in West Virginia, we're going to have to address the economics. And we're also going to have to address the stigmas that come with addiction. So many of our lawmakers treat folks going through addiction like they're throwaway people. And to me, it's disgusting. Everyone, I don't care what their circumstances was. I don't care what they're dealing with. Everybody is valued and everybody is worthy of love and dignity. And until we start treating folks who are dealing with addictions like human beings, I don't see the problem I don't see things getting any better. So to me, we're going to have to really work hard to destigmatize language surrounding addiction, and we're also going to have to promote social programs that keep people from entering down that path in the first place. With medical cannabis, when I looked at the data and saw that, hey, states that are allowing patients access to whole plant cannabis, they're seeing a 25% reduction in opioid-related deaths the first year of implementation. Over 5 years, that percentage increases to 47%. My first initial thought was, okay, well, we're going to legalize cannabis, and people are going to switch to cannabis. I don't know that is really the way that things are going to work. I think some folks probably will definitely do that, but how much better would it be for patients if you had surgery and, rather than them putting you on a strong opioid during the recovery process, how much better would it be for society if they gave you a plant, that didn't cause you to get addicted, and once your recovery was over, you could just get back to life. So I'm all about harm reduction. I'm all about ending the stigma. And one of the things that I try to not get philosophical on these things, but I think it's important in this conversation. When I was going through my battle with cancer, and I was literally on a deathbed. I was quarantined in the hospital. When they're telling you, that there's a good chance you're going to go to sleep and not wake up, there's a lot of things that cross your mind. You'll sit and think about things that happened 25 years ago in great detail. But the things that never cross your mind, money, material possessions, most of the things that everybody wake up in the morning and they spend their time chasing, right? And I learned the most profound lesson that I've ever learned in my life laying there on that deathbed. I don't know about folks, and this is what I say, I apologize for getting philosophical when you're here, but I know that in West Virginia, religion and spirituality is important to people, right? Like even our legislature, they get there and they start their day praying for the strength to do right by the people of West Virginia. And then what do they do immediately afterwards? They end up passing and pushing policies that further the disconnect and ultimately make things worse here in West Virginia. But one of the things that I learned laying there in that hospital, our only goal, the only reason that we're here is to learn how to love unconditionally, right? And I truly feel like we've got to get back to that. I feel like if you're watching this tonight and you are suffering with addiction, or you're trying to, just navigate this situation, I do want you to know that you're loved. I think that's important. And I think that everybody needs to know that somebody cares. And, as my role of patient advocate on the Medical Cannabis Advisory Board is something I take very seriously, but it doesn't just pertain to cannabis. I advocate for all patients. And if you're watching this and you're suffering with addiction and you don't have anybody to talk to, or, you feel that you've been disconnected from your family or friends, call me. My phone number is 304-356-9437. If you want someone to talk to you with no judgment, and I'll do everything I possibly can to help you out, because you are loved. I just think that's important that people hear that.
Thank you, Rusty.
It's super important that people hear that. Thank you, because they don't hear it enough. They hear that where they're lacking, where they need, what they've done wrong, everything. And that was I don't have any questions. That was just the perfect ending.
You got anything, Kenneth?
No, you summed it all up pretty well.
I remember, I think it was 2017 when I met Rusty for the first time in the run up to the 2018 elections. And I think a lot of people find it strange that we would be allied because I work in the recovery field and he's working for decriminalization. And I think that I haven't met anybody who's in recovery who's against decriminalization for two reasons. One, and the one thing we haven't really talked about is the impact on mass incarceration. That quit locking us up for those reasons. The other thing, I am certain I have met thousands and thousands and thousands of people with substance use disorders. And I am absolutely certain that nobody has ever been on their way to a dealer's house and said, "Oh my God, I just remembered this is illegal. I'm going home."
Right.
That's not how the process works.
Right.
And that's just, so addiction and legality are completely unrelated issues. It doesn't. Being a criminal issue doesn't stop people in active recovery or in active addiction from doing whatever drug they're going to do. And,
no, and actually, somebody in active addiction that gets caught and thrown in jail again, you're just furthering the disconnect. You're furthering the desire to do that drug for a lot of people. I think that the way our lawmakers approach this issue, while they may have the best intentions at heart, they're making it worse. They're absolutely making it worse. The more we criminalize addiction, cancer's nasty. When it showed up in my life, it was nasty. But you wouldn't throw a cancer patient in jail, right? For getting sick. You wouldn't throw someone suffering from, fibromyalgia or somebody suffering from ALS in jail, right? You would help them. And it's the same exact thing with people in active addiction. They need our help. They need to know that they're valued, and they need to know that they're loved, and they need to know that there's people out there that's willing to go to bat for them and fight for them. And if I'm elected to represent the 35th district, folks dealing with addiction will never, ever have to guess or wonder whose side I'm on.
Appreciate you.
Thank you
for your time, Rusty.
Thank you all very much. Thank you for what you're doing. Have a great night.
All right, you too. Good luck, brother. All right, Rusty. Now we have Jeanette Rousey next. I think Jeanette was one of the first people that logged in, so we'll get her on here.
Good evening.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, I want to personally endorse Rusty Williams. To those in the 35th district. I had a chance to spend about 6 or 7 hours with him in the car. We were both part of the insulin affordability team that went to Canada. And I learned so much from him and gained so much respect for what he's been through. And, I really hope that he gets in. So I'll try to be as brief as possible. And I've heard such good conversation here that I want to kind of talk about my unique perspective that I would bring to the legislature. But I'm running in District 17, which is parts of Cabell and Wayne County, mostly Huntington, West Virginia, where a lot of bad things and good things have been happening. And I ran in 2018, and I'm challenging again for one of the 2 seats. And my 3 priorities are being a strong voice for children and families, stopping the exodus of our young adults from West Virginia, and fully fighting the addiction epidemic, fully putting the money and the resources towards that. And, again, so many people have a personal story, and it became personal to me in 2016 when I was helping a good friend of mine write the eulogy for her daughter, Taylor, who was one of the first individuals who was part of that 26 overdoses in August of 2016. And they tried to get treatment for her. And she passed away in September 25 of 2016, 3 days before the waiting list came up for her to receive Suboxone treatment. And I began to help advocate for her because she was unable at the time for Medicaid to approve for her to get out of state residential treatment. And it was a tragedy. And we've been fighting since then to kind of remove some loopholes, but it's still a continuing fight. But I want to talk a little bit about prevention because that's kind of my whole background. And I think this might be a helpful story for anyone in the recovery or any community who does not think that there's a connection between government and politics in their personal life. Because 40 years ago, I was graduating from Marshall University, and I trained for a career that became extinct really before it left the ground. When I was beginning college, the Comprehensive Community Mental Health Centers Act was passed and signed by Jimmy Carter. That would have had prevention departments nationwide in community mental health centers. And what happened was that after decades of study and work and this model for community mental health to deinstitutionalize people and help people be whole in their communities, with the stroke of a pen, Ronald Reagan basically gutted it and turned it into a community block grant program. And we've seen this over and over. So I worked briefly right out of college for a prevention department in Ohio for a mental health center, but they quickly went by the wayside. And I think, in addition to being in college and having federal grants for students' tuition go away, I felt from an early time that there's that really strong connection between what the government does and what the government funds and where we are in our lives. And when I look at the addiction epidemic today, you look at how could that have been prevented. And my career, since 2001, I was able to kind of do my dream job under a federal SAMHSA grant for about 15 years, working with a statewide partnership for children's mental health to kind of prevent out-of-state placement. And in that regard, I was able to work with people looking at all of our systems, looking at child welfare and our CPS workers and our courts and our schools and our mental health centers, and how these families of children with serious emotional disorders were really falling through the cracks because all of these systems could not get together and coordinate and make sure that they were being provided. And another piece of that was they wanted the family voice. But one of the things I did as a technical assistance person, I'm a writer, I'm a researcher, I'm a communicator, was getting to know families who have children with serious and complex challenges. The very children who probably have been incarcerated or have fallen victim to the opioid epidemic. And what I realized then, and this kind of gets to the nothing about us without us concept, which I think is so important, is that you need families, you need people who are consuming services, you need people who have been through this to give a reality check to the policy. And I think I have a really deep understanding of that. And I think our legislature really needs that perspective. I've worked in stigma reduction. I think that's such an important thing. And that's what I've seen year after year too. We have such good ideas and evidence-based practices and programs, but what happens so often in West Virginia in the name of tax cuts and having legislators who don't have kind of that long-term mindset is that you can work and work, just like, the commission under Jimmy Carter, and then somebody in accounting up in some building at the Capitol says, sorry, we don't have the match funds for this. So over and over, we've seen the promise of supports and prevention and, the things that help our communities become whole that go by the wayside. And it's been a terrible return on investment when you think of it that way. And if I'm in the legislature, I would be that voice, as one of 100, but that voice to help hopefully ask those questions, and to reach out and listen and make sure that everybody's not only in the room, but they're not sitting on the outside edges of the room. They're at the table, that they're at the table and they're being seriously listened to and giving the reality check to those plans and those policies that affect so many of us. So that's kind of that's my thing. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
We haven't hit on prevention. We haven't hit on prevention very much yet this evening. We clearly lost the war on drugs that was launched. Anymore, the war on drugs is a war on people. Prevention is key. What about those kids that are growing up in family members surrounded by substance use disorder? Like, okay, once upon a time it was DARE and that didn't work. What would be your idea for prevention now? Like, do you have an idea, or you want to listen and find out what ideas should be, or?
I think so. And one of the other kind of job that I've had, and I'm an independent contractor, I've worked with child abuse prevention. And I've been the statewide coordinator for a program called Strengthening Families. And I think when you think about prevention, one of the themes is like prevention is prevention is prevention. And when you look at the early brain development of children, there are things that kids need, and there's so much more we know now. But what I've worked in is protective factors. We've all heard of risk factors, but we've got to build those protective factors in that 0 to age 5 group, or we're going to have that perpetuating cycle of tragedy and poverty and, addiction and the crises that we're in now. So there's specific things that I think can prevent, help families, help heal communities. And there's 5 things that I focused on in my work. And one is building resilience. I think you can't just tell people that drugs are bad. You have to give people that foundation from an early age. And again, like Rusty says, have the ability to connect. So, understanding resilience in families is really important, and knowing those building blocks, kind of knowing the developmental markers for kids or young people, or, people kind of having that ability to know what's normal behavior and what's, may need a little help. Positive social connections. Social isolation is such a big risk factor, and we can build positive social connections. Obviously, in West Virginia, those concrete supports, if people's car breaks down or they don't have transportation, we need to deal with that. And then the final thing that I think culturally we need to deal with is social and emotional, managing and understanding our feelings. And that all sounds kind of warm and fuzzy, but that's what builds that foundation for people to have healthy relationships and to kind of overcome those risk factors. So those are kind of specific, but that's what I've worked in. And, those are things that you can put money towards. You can't put money towards, well, we can't count the number of overdoses that didn't happen, but you can put money towards proactive prevention. And I think I could bring a little knowledge to that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we have somebody here from that end of the continuum, the whole prevention, intervention, treatment, recovery continuum. I think the prevention area has changed a lot since I got clean. I'm actually the prevention lead for my county, and I can remember going to these World Cafe type events, and there would always be somebody there who would, okay, well, our team came up with a great idea. We're going to rent the pool, and we'll buy pizzas, and when the kids are eating pizza, we'll tell them drugs are bad.
Right,
and
right.
I'm just like, oh my God. But the kids you need to reach aren't coming to your party. But it's been good to see, evidence-based practices begin to be employed in that area. And I think, what you were talking about with the abuse situation, I think that a lot of us that work in recovery are more than aware that there's a higher correlation between childhood trauma and addiction than there is between obesity and diabetes. That
Right.
and we live in a state that is second in the nation in childhood sexual assault and number one in familial sex trafficking. And
Yeah.
we don't want to talk about those things, but I think that the more we can address those issues, if we can get to those kids now and work with them now, they won't be my clients in 20 years.
Absolutely. We have to address that early end of the spectrum at the same time that we're addressing the top of the pyramid. And, I hope to be elected to be a strong voice in that regard.
Right. Yeah. And I also think I've seen there's the beginnings of some prevention work done toward families and not just kids, but addressing the whole family, which is good.
We learned that in children's mental health systems of care is that, and these families are still my close friends. It's like, we have to learn what the family is dealing with and not try to separate out the individual and say, we're going to take them away and fix them or give them a pill or whatever, and then put them back and everything's going to go back to normal, because that's not the way it works.
Yeah. My board president has been my mentor for the last 12 years or so. And he's real big on family systems theories and how, sometimes the addicted person is just bearing the burden of a sick family.
Yeah. So. And if I could jump on something that Kevin mentioned earlier in the discussion today about person-centered language and fighting stigma, because I've done a lot of training with people in all fields about this, and some people resist that, and even in the most recent years, a lot more. And I got really tired of people saying, well, this is just politically correct language. And to me, my answer to that is no, this is demonstrating respect for people. And, I think above all, it's not that hard to do, but it's fabric of any kind of recovery system is respect for each other. And, so I wanted to piggyback on that because I thought that was a really good point.
Thank you. Anybody have any other questions, Joanne?
I know you have a lot of folks to get to.
Right. No, that was really good. All aspects of like family prevention, child prevention, person first, destigmatizing language. Like nobody wants to hear about that stuff right now either. But we're pushing it either way because it is just a respect thing, and it's not. Like, I heard you say this just a minute ago, Matt, saying the word clean. That's something that we're trying to move away from, because saying that we are clean now means that once upon a time we were dirty, and dirty is not equivalent to sick. Love you, Matt.
Yeah. Old habits die hard. Well, I thought about that when she brought up the whole destigmatizing language, that's, we are sometimes our own worst enemies in that. We go to 12-step meetings where we identify ourselves as addicts, but then we expect other people to say that we're people with substance use disorders.
And it's just like there's a disconnect right there, like with the recovery community, even in itself. But no, that was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Jeanette. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
All right. Now Robin. Bring Robin on. Is that next?
Yes, right? Robin's next.
All right, there she is, Robin.
Robin's been so patient. Oh, so patient.
Hello. I want to start out with saying how glad I am that you all did this. This has been, I know we have ran over an hour, but man, this has been the best conversation that I have sat in on since I decided to run for office. I wish that we were all in a great big room together getting to have this conversation so we could all go back and forth together. I've been sitting here yelling at the screen, no, that's what I wanted to talk about. Stop. But, so it would be great to be in a room together going back and forth. But I am Robin Cutlip. I'm running for House of Delegates in District 44. And my district, like every district in the state, is suffering from the addiction crisis. And, I'm a public school teacher, so I see it every day firsthand. When I first started teaching, we saw a lot of students that were addicted to various things, alcohol, drugs. But now it seems like it's more their parents. And it has turned. The tables have turned. And we have so many children. The state of West Virginia has 10,000 children in foster care. And I can probably guarantee you that the majority of those children are in foster care because their parents had them taken away because they were addicted to some sort of substance. It's become a war. The war on drugs has become a war on families. We're forgetting that there is a family. We can't just take these kids away from mom and dad because they have something wrong. We don't take them away when they are suffering from cancer. We don't take them away when they're suffering from heart disease. We should not be taking them away when they're suffering from a drug or an alcohol addiction. We need to have people that will go into those homes. We need to have counselors. We need to have crisis prevention counselors in our school buildings. So that is one of the main things that I'm going to be fighting for when I win this race. I want to make sure that we can end the hopelessness. Until we reach in and give a hand up to people that are needing it, we're just going to continue in a circle that's never going to end. It's just going to keep going. Our homeless rates are going to continue. Our drug addiction rates are going to continue. Our children in foster care, it's going to continue to grow. We're not going to be able to find people that can go to work that are able to pass a drug test. So we have to stop labeling people because they're people. Well, they're not drug addicts. They're not alcoholics. They're people that have something wrong to make them choose this route. No one wakes up and decides they want to be a drug addict, or no one wakes up and decides they want to be addicted to alcohol or gambling or shopping or any of the other addictions that are out there. Something has happened to them in their life that has made them go down that path. And I just feel like we have to reach in and pull these people out. And it's not just the person who's suffering, the whole family ends up suffering. So counseling needs to be provided all around the table. We need to have more rehabilitation centers in these rural areas. We cannot just have 2 or 3 across the state. More than likely, if you have an addiction crisis and you're probably not working. If you are, then you have other responsibilities as well. So being able to travel clear to the end of the state when you live in the middle of it is really not an option for you. We also need more women's addiction facilities. I'm not for sure why we seem to keep popping up more and more men's facilities, but studies are showing that more women are becoming addicted than men these days. So we have to find solutions. We can't keep labeling people. We must find solutions to help each other. Because I'm sorry, if you say that you don't know someone, either in your immediate family or a friend or a neighbor that is suffering from drug addiction, then you're either lying or you have your head in the sand, because it's all around us. And we have to stop looking down on people and reaching out a hand and helping these people out. Until then, it's not going to change. We're not going to accomplish anything by labeling and judging people. We have to be West Virginia for all, and all means all in my book. So I want to help and do anything that I can. And as a public school teacher, I'm always ready to learn. I teach my students that you're never done learning. So I'm here to listen. I'm here to learn. I want to be able to go to as many of these meetings and these reach up centers that I possibly can. I'm here to learn from everyone, and I think that we should never be done learning from each other. Like the stigmatisms, no labels. We need to know the right language when we're out there talking to people. We need to know what to look for. By having crisis prevention people in our schools, they're going to be trained and know what to look for as well. So I'm going to definitely fight for every school needs a crisis prevention counselor. Every state, every county needs to start looking into the foster care system and helping our kids. If they're not in the foster care system, they're living with grandparents or they're living with friends. It is much bigger than what we think that it is. and we have to open up our eyes and get to work.
Thanks, Ron. Go ahead, John.
I just wanted to say one thing, and you can go right ahead. I don't have a question. What you just said about it's much bigger than what everyone thinks that it is. Like, opening up these discussions like this for everyone to feel free to talk about them is what's going to open up the minds of other people. Like this right here, this tonight of what we're doing. You said it's been one of your favorite. I wish we could all be in a room also too. And it's just because, like, I don't really think anyone's ever done something like this before. Been like, hey, let's talk about the addiction crisis in West Virginia with all the candidates. And we've had great people come out, and it's opened up tons of discussions. Go ahead, Kenny.
First, clarify what areas on District 44?
It's all of Webster County. So I have all of Webster County. That's where I live, and that's where I teach. And we have part of Nicholas County. I have Craigsville, Richwood, Fenwick. It's all in Nicholas. And a little bit of Upshur and a little bit of Randolph.
Okay. I heard you mention, that you is for everybody, right? Part of our platform is inclusivity, right? And it's something I haven't asked any other candidate yet, but with you being an educator and your background in education, I kind of want to ask you this. There's in different areas in West Virginia, there's huge, larger or smaller, what's considered BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous, people of color. All right. And for those individuals in those areas, a lot of times they can feel disenfranchised from the education system, from the political system, from, criminal justice system. So for those individuals in your district, how would you make them feel, or how would you really express to them the fact that you are inclusive of all, regardless of, any type of stigma, racial bias, ethnic bias, or anything like that?
Just by going out and meeting them where they're at. I'm not going to talk over top of anyone's head. I'm not going to use big words that they don't know or could care less to hear. I'm going to talk to them like a mom. I'm a mother. I'm a grandmother. I'm a wife. I have sons that are growing up in this addiction crisis. I have students that I see every day from all walks. So I'm going to talk to them on the level that they're on. I don't care to go in their homes. I don't care to sit with them on the street corner. I don't care to meet them at the hilltop. I don't care to invite them in my own home, because until we reach people on the level that they're at, we're not going to be reaching people at all.
That was good.
Make me cry again. Too many times. I love your sign, by the way, with the apple. I'm way down here in Beckley, so I don't get to see any of this. Man, we've had such good discussions. Matt, do you have anything?
Now I have a hard time asking Robin questions because I know Robin, and I'm looking at some of the comments and trying not to be snarky, but
I'll go back and look at all those later tonight.
More statements and questions here, because I know that Webster County in particular, where Robin lives, is one, hard hit by addiction, and two, lacks recovery capital. It seemed like for years, every couple of months, I would get a message from the FRN director, the Family Resource Network director in Webster County, asking me to bring stuff down there, and we just haven't had the resources. But,
yeah. Now, right in the neighboring county, in Nicholas County, Craigsville has a great recovery center that they're doing. That they meet every Saturday night, and they're starting to invite anyone in the community to bring food, and anyone's welcome, whether you're in the addiction crisis or not. You're welcome to come in and listen. And it's called Reach Up Recovery Ministries, and they seem to really be reaching out and pulling people in. But we need those in every county. We need one right here in Webster. Heck, we need 2 or 3 in every county. So we have a lot of work to do. And when I say we, I definitely mean me. Whether I win this race or not, I want to be a part of this because I live in this community and I see my students hurting every day over this addiction crisis. So I want to do more than what I am doing.
We appreciate you hanging in here. You were one of the first ones to log in. And
it's been great conversation.
I'm so happy to hear you're a teacher running for office. Yeah, and even during COVID and everything else, still teaching through the craziness. I have 3 kids, all right? So I feel for my kids as teachers, everybody's teachers. Thank you so much for joining in the conversation tonight.
Thank you, guys. I look forward to more of these, and hopefully in person soon.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Robin.
Thank you.
All right. I think next on my list, who's here? I think we have Corey Chase.
Is Jason Stevens in the waiting room?
Nope.
All right. Yep.
Corey's the next one on the list. There he is. And Corey's also been waiting for quite a while.
No problem. Thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it. I was so glad to get the invite. Glad to see you guys doing this work. It's great. Did I do a little intro or something?
Yes, you would.
All right, cool. I'm a candidate for the House of Delegates in the 53rd District, which is part of Preston and Tucker County. I was born and raised here in Tucker County, and I got a tough race against an incumbent that's a good old boy from Preston County, where most of the voters are at. He ain't doing jack, so I'm hoping my hard work pays off and I can beat him. But I got my no more pills in these hills, Paula Jean stuff here, and hoping some of these progressives can win. And I've been running. I'm a West Virginia Can't Wait candidate, endorsed and supporter, and have signed their pledge and won't punch down on people struggling with their pain. I have this conversation probably once a week with somebody who's like, these damn druggies, and I try to remind them that they're real people and that the person comes first. And I've had people, my friends, that are dead from this or have ruined their life and left their children behind, and it's affected all of us on some level, and it's a crisis on so many levels. And I try to connect people with the idea that this is actually largely a socioeconomic crisis that drives people towards using drugs to escape the horrible life that they live in because of a non-living wage and just the struggle of our socioeconomic system that is in despair right now, basically. But we're 5 days away. I'm exhausted. I know a lot of people are as well. COVID was exhausting already, and it's been a whirlwind of a year. And so I'll stop rambling. But glad you guys are here, and glad that I was invited. So.
I'm so glad that you got to come back.
Yeah.
And it was really hard with everybody's schedules, and we went so over time today, and everybody has stuck it out because it's been such a great conversation that nobody really talks about, plus past into the addiction crisis. Like, everybody wants to put that on their stuff, but like nobody really wants to have that deep conversation about how do we do that? What do we do? Okay, so we sent out our vote recovery platform, and it's community inclusion, reform and reentry, harm reduction, equal access, reducing stigma. All right, since you said progressive, so to be, what are your thoughts on harm reduction?
Love it. I've been learning a lot about it just through following some of the people doing the work. My man Joe Solomon is one of my main heroes. Love that guy. Love him to death. Stephen Smith, of course. There's so many people. I can't even name them all. I'm learning about it. I've in my district is Jacob's Ladder. It's a program for recovery. I know that's not necessarily harm reduction, but just learning about what the intensive method can actually produce results seems to be the way to go. Don't waste your money with a short program that doesn't work. Why are we doing this to people? Why are we essentially half-assing it and going, well, here's 30 days. All right, you're out. Okay, you're good. With no follow-up and no counseling and no community. I mean, from what I've seen with the Jacob's Ladder folks, they are creating community. They're giving these people a work incentive, like an outdoor farm type work incentive, and just like creating these real bonds that are like unshakable. I've seen some of these young men graduate from this program, and they're in tears and they're hugging each other. This is pre-COVID. They're just so you can just see how far they've come. And there's people in the room that you can tell are not quite there yet. They don't have as much hope in their eyes. They're really struggling and they're going through some hard shit. And apologize for the language, but it's rough, And I feel like that program gave me a lot of hope. And that's it. Recovery Boys is the only documentary I've ever seen, but it's about that place. And I've been reading about this hub and spoke model that Vermont uses, where they basically create these intensive care units kind of across the state that are like long-term intensive care, or not long-term, they're intensive treatment centers. And then there's more long-term care on the spokes, where these smaller areas have the ability to help with counseling and kind of create, I guess, what you would call fellowship and clinics that have like the medication-assisted treatment and things like that. So, we can do this. We just got to prioritize it. That's always people always say, how are you going to pay for it? It's like, hey guys, we're the richest country in the world. Like reminder, folks, like ding, ding, ding. It's not so much like how we're going to pay for it. It's how do we prioritize these things? It's human life, I mean, people call me a humanist all the time, and I'm like, yeah, I guess you could label me as that. But I just think that if we're not trying to take care of people, what are we really doing? Probably being greedy, honestly, So, but yeah, the West Virginia Can't Wait platform is something that's been a guiding light for me, and I know that they've done a lot of the legwork to really get real people that have recovered building the policy, and across the whole policy board, that is the way to do it. It's not a top-down approach; it's a bottom-up approach. It's what we've needed in government from the start, and we can change all this stuff. We have no choice, honestly. Like, we've got to do it. So, establishing jobs programs and making sure that people are re-entering the workforce and not just thrown out, but like given support, given counseling, given some kind of community network that they can work with and fall back on if they need to. And they're people struggling with addiction. They're not just addicts. It's not a label on their forehead. They're still they're still real people, of course. And the stigma is just so mind-numbing to me. I mean, there's so many people that they can't see beyond the addiction, and they judge people so heavily for it, and they kick people while they're down, and it's unfortunate and it's sad. Yeah, I could ramble all night, but yeah.
I love Ryan up there at Jacob's Ladder, by the way. He is good people. Good people.
Yeah. And my best friend grew up in Aurora, so I spent most of my childhood 2 miles down the road from that place, right by Cathedral State Park. And when I found out that they were there, I went, this is too wild. I just couldn't believe it. Like, what are they doing here? In Aurora, the oldest town in Preston County, kind of a cool little place. But yeah, it was neat. It was heartwarming to go to some of these graduations for some of these guys that were graduating from that program. And I mean, I was in tears at times. It was just like powerful stuff. These guys were at the bottom of the barrel and ready to commit suicide, and they've ruined themselves, but they didn't. They recovered, and it worked. And it took them a long time, and it was hard, but they've done it. And some of these guys that attended the graduation had done it way before them, and they're clean. They're doing it. They're working, and they've got a network of people helping them. Whenever they feel the need to use again, they help each other, and that's what we need, man. We need community and fellowship. We're social creatures, no matter what. So, it's great what you guys are doing. I'm getting chills, man. I'm like, oh, we need this so bad. I'm thinking about my friends that are long gone, and it's just like, God, how unfortunate, just young people that are down and out, and we got work to do, man. We got work to do. Whether I win this election or not, I'm doing the work, and I know you guys are too. And it is not about one election or one person or one party or anything. It is a movement, and it is for life, long term. Go, all y'all, man. Just doing the work. That's been my hashtag lately. Just do the work, and hashtag whatever. But like, really do the work. And this is it. We're doing the work, and I'm a middle class guy with privilege, and I know that, but I want to use it to help people, and not just sit on my laurels and point fingers at everybody. I mean, if I'm pointing fingers at anybody, it's those guys up there. It's the top. But anyways, yeah, I really appreciate you guys doing this. I don't know if I should keep talking about stuff or you got questions or what, but I'm so glad. I'm so glad you're doing your work. Great.
Thank you, Corey.
That's for sure. I think that's most everybody's hashtags right now. Just gotta push through, get through, go through.
Yeah. After November 4th, it'll be hashtag take a nap. Rest. Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Corey.
Yes, I just want to say thank you.
It's been a while.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I look forward to us doing work together.
I know, right? I'm hoping to be down in Charleston in January and shake it up.
Sounds good.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. See ya.
All right. So next up, we have Luke Winters. We'll bring Luke on. He's also been here for quite a while, so we appreciate you hanging in there with us.
Oh, no, thank you, guys. I've learned a lot just from sitting here listening to you guys talk.
So you want to go ahead and tell us about yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Luke Winters. I'm running for House of Delegates in District 10. That's in Wood County. So first off, thank you guys so much for hosting this platform. I've learned a ton from listening to not only you guys, but the other candidates speak. My personal journey with substance use disorder, addiction, the opioid crisis, whatever you want to call it, started at the beginning of 2019. I was really just curious and uneducated on the topic in general. And there was a job opening at the Oriana House that I applied for. And I was like, I just want to learn more about this subject in general. And I got the job, and I was a treatment assistant and then a counselor for a year. And when I was working with people there, it was a residential substance use treatment facility. So they stayed there 24/7. We had males and females. We catered to all different types of substance use disorders, whether that was alcoholism, with fentanyl, other opioids, methamphetamines. And then we also had like a withdrawal section also. So we cater to the entire spectrum. And then after that, currently, my job now is I transport people to and from jail, to treatments, to their court dates. And when I'm interacting with these people, we just have normal conversations, just because people who suffer from substance use disorder, they're no different than you or me. They're just regular people. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care if you're rich, poor, white, black. It does not matter. It doesn't care where you're from. It's going to affect everybody, and everybody that I know has been affected by it in some way. What I hear a lot of And what really drew me to your guys' platform is we need to reduce the stigma. So when people hear what field I'm in, they often say, well, aren't you worried for your safety, or do the people you interact with, do they act strange? And when I hear these things, it really just throws me for a loop, just because, like I said, they're regular people. We have regular conversations just like anybody else. Another thing that I think part of reducing the stigma is we have to educate people on negative terms, like you guys have also discussed here tonight. And the one that's always gotten me the most is when people say alcohol and drugs. Alcohol is a drug. So that's my big one. And then I also think we need to focus on rehabilitation and less on incarceration. So we need to lift people up instead of lock them up. So we currently see people who are incarcerated for nonviolent drug offenses, and that only exacerbates the problem. So probably the single most interesting thing I learned over the past 2 years when I was studying the opioid crisis or substance use came from a professor in Canada in the 1970s. His name was Bruce Alexander. He came up with this experiment called Rat Park, where he placed a rat inside of a cage and he gave it a water bottle with just water and another water bottle that was laced with some kind of drug, whether that be heroin, meth, cocaine. And what he found from this experiment was that the rats almost always became addicted and almost always overdosed and died, typically from either like malnutrition in a week or two. But what we see from that experiment is, of course, that's going to happen when you put a rat inside a cage and don't give it any kind of pleasure or excitement. So what he did with his Rat Park experiment was he devised what he called like a heaven for rats, where he gave them all kinds of toys, other rat friends, cheese, whatever a rat would deem enjoyable in life, they had here in Rat Park. And they also had their regular water bottles and then water bottles laced with drugs. And what they found was that the rats didn't compulsively use the drugs. They weaned themselves off of the drugs. He even went as far as to get rats addicted in the original cages and then move them into Rat Park, and they weaned themselves off. So what we see here, and other candidates have mentioned this also throughout the night, is that the opioid crisis that we see here today, it's not the problem. It's a result of a lot of other issues that we see here in West Virginia, such as poverty and lack of education and things like that. So that's what we need to really, really address. And then also, I've been learning a lot more about harm reduction programs and even participated in some of them when I worked at the Oriana House, such as needle exchanges. They're very, very beneficial. So they reduce overdose deaths, they reduce HIV, they reduce hepatitis C transmissions. We also need to focus more on like medication-assisted treatment, such as Vivitrol injections, then maybe like Suboxone and things like that. So those are the areas that I have experience in, such as the rehabilitation aspect and then the transportation of clients to and from treatment. So I get to interact with them daily on an intimate level and really hear their concerns. And I think that's very important because part of the West Virginia Can't Wait platform that I signed on to, and then also your guys' mantra of nothing about us without us, is very, very crucial, because we can't go about solving this problem unless we invite people into that process that are actively engaged in those problems daily. So if you guys have any other questions for me, I would be happy to answer them.
I do, and this is me bringing out Abby. Abby's one of our other team leads here in the state. You did happen to mention, medication assisted recovery, and Vivitrol and the shots, the naltrexone shots, Suboxone. You didn't mention methadone. There is a war itself like going on in the medication assisted recovery with people with methadone don't have the same rights as people with Suboxone. And then even in the whole recovery field in general, like that's just a huge fight anyways, because you've got people in recovery that are like, oh, well, they're on medication, so you're not in recovery like any other. So not only is it stigmatized with them, it being MAR, it's even stigmatized even farther inside of MAR because they're all fighting on, well, don't use this, don't use this, use this. And methadone's been around for a long, long time, and it's a lot cheaper than Suboxone. Like, do you know? Like, clearly, there's not really anything that I can ask you. This is really much more of a statement because you hit on everything, unless there's something that Kenny would have to ask. But did you know that? Or have you even thought about methadone? Or
I have. My experience, I don't have much experience with methadone, so I can't really speak to very educationally wise on it, because my experience was just with Vivitrol. But like you said, there is a big stigma within the community about you're taking this medication-assisted treatment, you're taking this medication-assisted treatment, and that's not good for anybody. I mean, that's just a bunch of infighting. That's not going to solve any problems whatsoever. So in regards to the methadone, I need to educate myself more on that. And I'm not sure how prevalent the use is of that around here, but I think there's definitely a need for it. So I will look into that more.
thank you. That's just, Abby's not on our call with us tonight, but that's me pulling her on with us because she's our big. I'll hook you up with Abby. She's our big medication assisted recovery, like for all of it, but certainly methadone because there's not enough talk about it.
Thank you very much. It definitely hooked me up with her. I'd be happy to discuss that with her. I think it's crucial that we all, because like I said, when I came into this field, it was just to learn because I was very uneducated on the subject, and I've learned so much in the last 2 years, and I know there's so much more for me to learn. And I think if everybody just had that same mantra, then that same methodology about approaching the situation, that we could really, really solve some problems that we have here in West Virginia. Any more questions?
No, I think you pretty much hit a little bit on everything. I know you talked about, the nonviolent drug offenses, and I was in 2008 till 2010. I was living in Wood County, and subsequently went to prison for nonviolent drug offense. It was my first drug offense, and I wasn't given any chance for probation or anything like that. Alternative sentencing. They didn't care about my, kind of background really. It was just looked at as you're, dealing in drugs, and so you're going to prison. And I ended up doing 5 years on a 2 to 20 sentence. So there's, to me, within reentry, recovery, prison, criminal justice reform, there's a lot of work in a lot of counties in the state, a lot of areas in the state, with really developing some alternative sentencing methods for people that have other co-occurring issues other than substance use disorders. A lot of issues that people can be going through, whether it's mental health or, emotional issues that kind of exacerbate their kind of criminal element on their criminality behavior. And I think, there's a lot of stuff that can be done with it. And you mentioned some of that, so I thought that was pretty good.
I agree with what you say. So as far as like the co-occurring disorders go, I feel like most people don't know that most people who suffer from like substance use disorder also have a co-occurring disorder. And I also feel that mental health disorders are almost even more stigmatized than a substance use disorder these days. It's very close. And then going back to like the mass incarceration, so we obviously have to focus more on rehabilitation and less on incarceration. One of the main facility that I will pick people up from is the North Central Regional Jail. And what we have going on there is just an absolute mess. I mean, their capacity limit, I believe, is around 400 people, and they have 750 inmates. So you have 4 people to 1 jail cell, just inhumane living conditions and human rights violations, honestly. And these things have to be addressed and fixed.
Absolutely. I did 21 months in North Central Regional Jail prior to going to prison.
I'm sorry to hear that. It's a mess. Thank you guys so much for your time. I really, really appreciate you guys giving this platform to everybody and to allow me to speak here. If there's ever a time you guys do this again in the future, I'd be happy to speak again.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for coming. Matt, are you muted?
Oh, it turns out I am. I was just thanking Luke for his time. He hung in there from the beginning. He's been here waiting for a long time. We're 30 minutes over. I can't believe that you're working in Parkersburg and I don't know you. So I just sent you a Facebook friend request.
Well, yeah, we'll have to hook up. Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. Next up, we're bringing Barbara Evans Fleischhauer on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm here.
And there she is.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you for being here.
Sure. I'm happy to be here, and I'm also grateful that you're having this. You put us all a little bit on the spot, but I think this is such an important topic that we all need to be on the spot. And so I'm happy to be here. Should I just start with my intro?
Yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, my name is Barbara Evans Fleischhauer, and I am a longtime delegate for Montague County. I am lucky that we have 5 members in our district, and I get a lot of assistance and collaboration with the people that are in my district. I presume Danielle was on earlier tonight. Is that right?
Yes, she was.
Okay. Well, actually, you guys have disappeared on me, and I understand that
You're full screen.
We have it highlighted you while you're speaking.
Yeah, we're
okay,
giving
all
you
right.
the whole screen.
Oh, okay. Well, it's kind of nice to have a conversation.
Okay.
I'm Rodney Miller and Mike Pushkin are waiting in the broadcast room, and they are colleagues of mine on the Judiciary Committee. Very important colleagues on this topic, especially. Let me just, for people that might be listening and have never heard of me or know me at all, I am the longest serving female in the House of Delegates. I've been in the legislature 24 years. And I have, most of that time I've been on the Judiciary Committee. I'm an attorney. And I've also been on the Health Committee the whole time I've been, that I have served. And I think that these issues come up in both committees. Recovery and criminal justice reform, they're interrelated. I probably, I don't know everything about recovery. Of course, you know, I know people that have died, and I know people that have addictions of different kinds and that are not successfully recovering the way they might like to be. I know that it's really hard. But I guess what I think my value is I know how to get things done in the legislature because I've been there so long. So it's a 60-day session, which is really fast. And you have to get bills through the legislature. You know, you have to get them in. You have to have them put on the agenda in a committee and maybe one or more committees. And then they have to pass one house and be read on the floor 3 separate days and then go to the other house. And it has to all be done in 60 days. And it's
it's an exciting thing, but it's very, very fast paced. So I guess what I think I can be helpful with is if a policy that we need to pass is identified, I can help strategize on how getting things done. One of the things I've gotten really interested in the past couple of years, my husband is a law professor, and I went with him to a conference. I wish I could go to more conferences. This one was in New Orleans, and I would do anything to go to New Orleans again. And I went to a lecture about court fines and fees. And that wasn't something that I had ever really thought about before. And I realized that I was sort of involved in that. I guess nationally, when there was this no new taxes movement, we started imposing fines to pay for programs that we thought were important. For example, I was interested in, when I first started my career, in teen court. I thought that was a good way to deal with small level offenses, and it had kids who were prosecutors and kids who were defense attorneys and kids on the jury, and everybody who went through this system, the kids decided what the penalties were. Well, we passed a bill that added $5 to tickets to cover the cost of teen court programs, and that seemed kind of minimal. Well, everybody else thought of doing that too, and so we ended up with traffic tickets that became more and more expensive. And what I didn't realize is that, and then another thing that we did, somebody had the bright idea of, if you don't pay your fines and fees, we're going to take away your driver's license. And we have over 100,000 people in West Virginia every year in the past who have lost their driver's license because they didn't pay a fine or fee. And then we have people who go to jail and can't afford bail, and they get stuck in, say, North Central Regional Jail, even though they're not guilty of anything. They're waiting trial. The trial, it's just a really, really vicious circle. And people may or may not have had a drug habit before they went in. But they're going to be in poverty, and they're going to have issues. So that's an area where I've spent a lot of time working. Right now, I am involved. I'm on a sort of ad hoc committee that meets by Zoom every week on criminal justice reform, talking about what we might do next session. This bill was just one. We passed bail reform that came through from the Senate side. I think very, very important to, a presumption that you don't have to have bail unless it's some kind of serious violent offense. And so in the last couple of years, Rodney and Mike, who are going to be on next, have both been very involved in these discussions. I think the driver's license thing was very important. I mean, it's crazy that you take away somebody's driver's license because they can't pay a fine, and the fine is over a ticket that is like not that big of a deal. And anyway, many states got into the same thing, and it was because, people felt that we couldn't pass any tax increases, even though we thought there were programs that were valuable that we needed to pay for. So that's an area I'm interested in. I do want to say one more thing about this group that I'm participating in. There is a conference upcoming called Beyond Bars Summit. Have any of you that heard of that? It's really exciting. It's on November 2nd, 12th. What am I saying? It's on November 12th, and it's on Zoom. I would suggest you Google it. The main speaker is this guy called Dwayne Betts, and he has written a book called Felon. Another speaker is Piper Kerman, who wrote Orange is the New Black. And I heard Dwayne Betts at a conference, and I think he's one of the most impressive speakers I've ever heard. And he told his story of being a young African-American in Washington, D.C., I think, maybe Baltimore. And he was a very good student. He was raised by a single mom. He had a friend. And that's when I started thinking about brain development and frontal lobe stuff. He had a friend who said, let's do this. And what it turned out this was a carjacking. And he was 16 years old. And he said that he had never in his life spent a night away from his mother. And he was immediately put into solitary confinement for a month. And then he served like 5 years or more. And then this guy, he's just amazing. He is a poet now. He has a law degree from Yale, and he can make people like me understand how the system works, how it affects people. I mean, it's almost like he translates for the rest of us who maybe he never experienced anything like that. You know, it was just, I mean, you just have to, it breaks your heart to think what happened to him and maybe what happened to you, Kenny. Something horrible, something similar that that maybe what, you know, the other kid had a gun, so that made it more serious, but they were just kids. Anyway, I think that that's an area where I have more expertise than I do maybe on recovery, but it seems like all this stuff is wrapped up together. I'm on the board of our local health right, and we had the first needle exchange program in the state. We don't talk about it a lot because it maybe doesn't help to talk about it a lot, but it's a very well-functioning system, and we've expanded beyond Mon County into other counties, including, I believe, Upshur, I think, or maybe, I don't remember there was more controversy in Upshur than other counties.
Yeah, Upshur was.
Maybe that's just the way Upshur is.
We had issues.
Anyway,
we still have a guy who comes and when the harm reduction folks from Health Right are here in Upshur County, he just marches up and down the street taking pictures of people. And
sometimes. But we have been able to keep it kind of under the radar, and it's been very successful. Anyway, I am happy to answer questions, and I appreciate this opportunity.
I don't really have any questions. I just want to say that we're going to be working a whole lot together. We're working with Lida Shepherd already. Work close with Rodney and Mike, with some people in the Governor's Council, and like, we're going to be busy in the Capitol this year when it comes to legislation and hitting the ground running. And like, I very much look forward to working with you and doing that.
Oh, thank you. I think it's exciting.
You know about so much about recovery. I don't know so much about legislation yet. Like, I'm learning, so we can help each other.
That sounds like a plan to me.
Everybody good? Well, we appreciate your time.
Yeah.
We know as we get close to the election, your time becomes harder and harder to get. So we appreciate you being here with us.
Oh, thank you. I have some takeout waiting for me.
All right.
It's been a long day, but I look forward to getting to know all of you better. Very much appreciate that you doing this, and everybody that's working behind the scenes also. So thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Good night.
All right. We're getting close to the end. I think we're going to bring Rodney Miller in now.
Yes, I'm excited for this.
There he is, and he's also been waiting for quite a while.
Oh, I've enjoyed listening to everything, listening to everyone, all the input. It's well worth it. It's well worth it. I'm going to make it real short and sweet on the campaign speech portion of this, okay? My name is Rodney Miller. I'm running for re-election to the House of Delegates in the 23rd District, which covers most of Boone County. That's the end of it, okay? Because what we're getting into here is not necessarily about me running or things like that. It's about perspective and a lot of the things that we all bring to the table on our experiences and why we do vote recovery, okay? You've heard from Barb. You're going to get ready to hear from Mike. The three of us have three distinct different backgrounds. And do we agree on everything when we start collaborating on these? Not always, but we try to make the best effort we can and listen to each other and try to get the best product we can. First, thank you guys for doing this, being the leaders. I know in the state of West Virginia, I don't know if the other states are doing this or not, but thanks for putting this on, because this is not just paying lip service, as some people may want to do, as some candidates want to do, that they can march up and down the road, that they're going to advocate for some particular issue and things like that, and when actually they don't. All they're trying to do is again, pay lip service in order to try to get some people to vote for them. So it's important that we're able to converse and learn from each other. My background is in law enforcement. I spent 33 years with the Sheriff's Department in Boone County. And maybe it's my old age, maybe it's experiences coming early on in the days of the time that there was a war on drugs. I think that most law enforcement officers, at least with any experience, will agree with me on what I say is we cannot arrest our way out of the problem. It didn't work. It's not going to work, and we've got to do better. We've got to do better. We've experienced some things through the years that we learned, and I can remember along the time that it was around 2005, we started noticing folks that were passing away on us, and I think Matt referred to this earlier, that it's just not natural for a 25-year-old to have a cardiac arrest. We found that out really quick, and we started sounding the alarm here in Boone County. But it fell on deaf ears. We were having trouble getting people to listen to us as we were on the front end of all this madness that we're seeing. But it's something that we saw early on, and honestly, in the law enforcement world, we didn't know how to deal with it. All we knew were that once in a while we would get a notification of a person that had passed away that was not of the right age and again unnatural, and it was after the fact that we didn't even have a chance to go look at it, investigate it, evaluate, and try to get information out of it. So what that is translated to for me now being in the legislature. It's really obvious, and I've learned a lot from speaking to some people and learning from those that are in active recovery and are working through the system now. It's not just about a singular person. It's about the family. It's about the children. It's about the friends. It's about the neighborhood. It's about all of us, because anyone that says they haven't been affected either is not paying attention or they're lying. That's painfully obvious. Having family members that have been affected, some had passed away, some are still in recovery. So again, if they're not paying attention or they're lying, one of the two. There's one thing back from my law enforcement days that I want to kind of address here real briefly. And when my time's up, somebody cut me off. Joanna, you cut me off. Feel free to. Okay. I was a DARE instructor for our sheriff's department here in County for probably 15 years or so. All right.
My fifth grade DARE
and that was one of those situations that did DARE work? No, not necessarily. It didn't do what it was intended to do. I know it was a program set out by the Los Angeles Unified School District. Is that going to work in rural West Virginia? Well, it had good intentions. Didn't work the way it was designed to, or the way it was intended to. But I will say this. I've heard a lot of the folks throughout the evening talk about relationships, being able to make connections and having support structures and things like that. That's what I took away as an instructor, as a law enforcement officer, being in the classroom, dealing with these fifth and sixth graders, depending upon the school, because we found a network, if you will, that these children had the ability to. And believe me, I heard a lot of stories that would would really scare what the parents or the adults in these children's lives. With what once that barrier was down to where they would communicate with me, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the community, and I never took that out into investigations or prosecutions. But I learned a lot about the community, and that probably helped me get to the point of understanding what little I do now. And I can't say I understand it all, because that would be a misstatement, because I'm still learning. But even as I've been out of the sheriff's office now 8 years, I ended teaching there a lot longer before that. One of the things to still hold on to, and I can prove it to you relatively easily. One of the things I always told my kids, okay, if you ever need me, call. Okay, I got a call not long ago, and here we are, and she's right there. This one. I'm reversing the camera here. Okay. Got a call from one of my former DARE students. Hey, we need you. The offer still stands. So we are in this together. One of the things that is covered earlier is, and I saw this in a one of the comments, because I've got two screens going here, guys. I feel like I'm at a control center or something. I've got another screen I'm watching the Facebook live on. So I'm able to see some of the comments and some of the questions. And this was brought up by some folks actually in Boone County that I 100% agree with, and and only because I can't go farther than 100%. More resources are needed all over West Virginia, in Boone County, and especially in southern West Virginia. We've got to have those. As a law enforcement officer, if we get into a situation where we can make a diversion, if a law enforcement officer is in a situation that somebody really needs help, and this is not one of those things that years ago you may have been locked up for, that you can actually help someone. We don't have the resources to get that person the help that they need, or the help that they're requesting when they're at their rock bottom. Because if this happens on a 4:30 on a Friday evening, they can't wait till Monday morning at 9 o'clock when somebody comes in the office. It has to be done then. When you are asking for help, if you dial the 911 number and you're asking for help, you need help then. You don't need it later. You don't need an appointment. You need help then. That's painfully obvious. Because what we're dealing with, we're dealing with real people, real issues, and we need real results. It's the stone cold hard facts. And sometimes I get in trouble for being a little edgy when I say some things in the legislature, but it's true. I heard Robin earlier talking about her experience as a school teacher. My wife's a school teacher. My daughter's a school teacher, and me being around the schools a lot in my career and seeing what's going on. The 7 to 3 issues, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. issues that are going on in the school. The teachers are really doing the best they can, and they're doing a pretty doggone good job managing the children with everything that they have to experience. The problem is the 3 p.m. to 7 a.m. when they're outside of the school. That's what we're not taking care of. The counseling needs to be at the schools to help these kids navigate through this stuff, to see some of the things that they are seeing on the streets and in their homes and what they're experiencing. And if we don't provide the funding for that and get those services in the school, we're doing a huge disservice to them. And that leads us into listening to the people that are directly affected. We have lots of different programs. We have lots, and I'm not cutting on any of the programs, but it seems as though we go on a buckshot approach. Sometimes, you hit this splatter. You got all these different programs, and everybody has the best intentions in the world that their program is the best. But we need to tighten that down. And try to get it to the best services for the best situation for each individual, because everybody's different. What works for one might not work for the other. We need to be able to identify that and stay with that and hold the course, if you will. I've learned a lot along the way while we've been advocating for the family drug courts, which Boone County is, and I'm really, really pleased that we're one of those counties in West Virginia. As a matter of fact, yesterday I got to attend the second drug court graduation here, where they had 8 folks graduate from that system, and each one of them, while we were watching that, their children ran up to join them while the judge was giving their certificate, and the Supreme Court watched on. There were some other legislators there to see what, that's what it's all about. Again, it was something that it was a bill that passed with no opposition in the House and the Senate to give a total product treatment to the families and for that. And that's I'll never forget a guy that I've known a lot of years, and I didn't know his daughter was graduating from that program yesterday. Myself, Delegate Chad Lovejoy from Cabell County, from Huntington, and Judge Thompson were talking after the graduation program. And this guy that I've known a long time came up and thanked the 3 of us for what we were doing because we gave his daughter back. You never know what impact that you have. That's why we need to be doing things in the, under the dome and in the Capitol and in the legislature to do things for people and not to people. That's the difference making right there. So it's one of those things that we. That's why we're there. That's why we're there. More people need to really see that. I'm learning more about medically assisted treatment. That's more of a maintenance, just like a diabetes medication for an insulin to keep people going. I never had it put to me that way before until I was talking to a doctor, and I, he was wanting to talk in clinical terms and things like that. I said, "Listen, doc," I said, "I'm a dumb cop. You're going to have to break it down to me and explain to me how this works, how, because we see some drugs sometimes that are diverted, and the law enforcement sometimes sees the negative part of the world. We need to see the positive part. Tell me how this works." He enlightened me on that, and I'm a believer. We were talking about the injected MAT that cannot be diverted and can help some people. So learning about that, I'm learning that Medicaid won't pay for that, for some of that. That's silly. That doesn't make any sense to me, because it's just like the old commercial. I don't know if any of you guys are old enough to remember this or not. It's the old commercial: you pay me now or pay me later. So it's much easier to deal with the problem on the front end than get bit with it on the back end. And I'll finish with this. I know I'm babbling a little bit, but I'm trying to cram a lot into a short period of time and not keep you on here any longer. We've got to eliminate the stigma. It's things people don't need to be held down because of something that may have happened. It's a learning process all the way through life. We all kind of stump our toe from time to time. We learn, we get better, and that's the ultimate goal. And that's just that's enough about that. But we've got to do better in eliminating the stigma. And does anybody have any questions?
Boy, not now. I thought I did, and I thought I was going to look really smart for asking this question, but then you already addressed it. Judge Thompson's family treatment court seems to be doing pretty well from what I can tell from afar. I haven't talked to him lately about it. I know Randolph County, my neighboring county, was also one of the, and they seem to have kind of fallen on their face. But, I'm just wondering from your perspective if this is something that seems like we might want to expand and take Judge Thompson's successful rendition of that and take it on the road.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things we were talking about. We were right after the graduation, and some judges may not be accepting of that. But it needs to be a tool on the belt of the judges of the courts in order to do that. And I know some courts are busier than others, but there's no excuse for not taking time to put a face, a human story with everything that comes before you. And we need to make that available to all 55 counties and all of the circuits, because from my experience, what I have seen, and from what Judge Thompson tells us, this is the real deal. And from a practical standpoint, if you have a person that has a substance abuse disorder, okay, and you treat that person, and they get to the point that they're going to be released or get back with the family or whatever, if you're sending them back into a negative atmosphere, what result do you expect? So that's the learning curve that the state of West Virginia needs to have.
Yeah, we see that a lot. I had somebody recently who was trying to come to our program, trying to parole to me, because even his family didn't want him to become home because they were all using, and they were like, "Well, if parole comes here to look at your living conditions, then we're all going to jail."
Yeah.
And we have to treat the whole.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with that. And it's one of those deals, and I try not to use coaching terms too much, but winning breeds winning. If you see a successful program, you should be able to replicate that in other parts.
Exactly. And that's the same thing that we do with advocacy and that we're doing with the Recovery Advocacy Project. Like what's working. I'm echoing. I'm sorry, my computer died earlier. That's why I hopped off and then I had to come on my phone now. But that's what we're doing, like, systematically, is what's working. We give it to somebody else. Like, of course, it's not the same everywhere. You just adjust it accordingly. I'm not going to go much into that because we've talked. And Rodney really meant what he said about, like, I can message him anytime and he will get directly back with me, whether it's questions or Boone County or legislation or, just to talk in general. Like, I've known him since, well, he was my DARE instructor in 5th grade.
Be careful. Don't talk about ages. Don't talk about ages.
Right. All right. I'm done with that then. Thank you so much for coming, Rodney. I don't have any questions for you, unless Kenny does.
Your background in law enforcement, right? Do you find it hard to put forth legislation that might be a little bit more kind of forgiving for certain offenses, or even have you considered the fact that West Virginia is an indeterminate sentence state? You have a bottom number and a top number, and you can do anywhere between your minimum and your maximum kind of thing. And have you looked at what certain cases involve, certain criminal offenses that deal with people, in recovery or substance use disorders or other current issues, that maybe an indeterminate sentence may not be necessarily appropriate within the state for those reasons of overcrowding and really trying to get people help, and rather than locking them up and warehousing them to where there's not really that much help for them.
Yeah. We have looked at that, and it is fair to say, and Mike may pick up on this, and I think Barbara would agree with me. Our entire criminal justice sentencing structure is messed up. It's kind of antiquated. We see, and I've seen it since I've been there. I've only been there 4 years, but doing the lobbying work for the Sheriff's Association and the Deputy Sheriff's Association before that. What happens is sometimes the legislature gets into some knee-jerk reaction, and they're making law that would they're trying to capture people that they're mad at rather than those that they're afraid of. and those that they're mad at may not necessarily be the criminal element that needs to be locked up. So there's been several of us that have advocated for a while now that the sentencing structure for the criminal code in West Virginia needs a complete overhaul. And I think there's some folks that are working on that in the interim session and the COVID madness right now. They've been having some meetings to try to get that figured out now during a time where they can think more clear about it and not have some issues that may be that may get us into a more emotional setting during the committee meetings and things like that.
That was my only question. That was pretty good.
That was a good one.
Thank you, Rodney. I always love that you have that different approach of looking at things with your background in law enforcement. Valuable.
Well, thank you.
And I appreciate you so much. And thank you for waiting all this time and to join us tonight.
Well, I've enjoyed it, and thanks for having me, and thanks for putting us on. It's one of those deals that you can't learn if you don't talk.
We appreciate your time.
All right, thank you all. Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you, Ron.
All right. Last but not least,
certainly not least,
bring on Mike Pushkin
to close us out.
Yeah, Mike from Mike serves the 37th district, but also a little tiny piece of Upshur County that's my yard. Because when they're in session, I know he's got a million people messaging him, but I'm always messaging Mike. What about this? What's going on? I need to do this. Oops. You're muted, Mike.
He's been talking for 2 minutes. Muted.
You're muted. We're trying to unmute you. You've muted yourself, so I can't. There you go.
All right. I'm officially getting old. I don't know how to work one of these things. But I just want to thank you all for putting this, for hosting this, and inviting me and allowing me to back clean up here tonight. My name is Mike Pushkin. I'm running for re-election to the 37th district here in Kanawha County. I was first elected in 2014. I'm also in long-term recovery. And I don't say, I often say this too, I don't say that to get a pat on the back, because as you all know, that doesn't get you a pat on the back. I say that because that's what motivated me to run in the first place. And that's what influences my decision-making when we're talking about drug policy, when we're talking about criminal justice reform, when we're talking about reentry issues, when we're talking about funding for programs. It's who I am, so I can't help but influence the way that I think and my experience. So I wanted to bring that experience, the experience of a person in long-term recovery, to the legislature, because basically I paid a lot of, I've been involved with politics for a long time, and I've paid attention for a long time. I paid attention. But I think it was a session or two before I decided to run. I was paying attention to a House Judiciary meeting where they were discussing a naloxone bill that was, that's harm reduction, allowing that life-saving medication that used to be a lot cheaper, by the way, allowing first responders and making it easier for people to have that drug so we can keep people alive, because you can't get somebody help if you can't keep them alive. And I was very frustrated in listening to this committee meeting because there was just such a misunderstanding of it. And that was one of the things that really prompted me to run. And that first session in 2015, we were able to pass that bill. It took a few years. We got that bill passed through harm reduction bill in making naloxone more available. Since then, we've gone back and made it even more available. We also, that same session, we passed another bill that there was a great misunderstanding planning over it, and it was hard to get back. And something that doesn't get talked about nearly enough, and not enough people know about this, but West Virginia has a good Samaritan law, meaning that if people are using another and somebody overdoses, that if somebody calls 911, that they would get immunity from criminal prosecution for possession charges. They call without fear of getting in trouble and hopefully save their friends so we can get their friend help. Once again, you can't help somebody if they're dead. So we were able to pass those two bills during that first session. Also, being in recovery, one of the issues that I really wanted to work on was criminal justice reform, and introduced what was first called the Second Chance for Employment Act. It met great resistance from the former Speaker of the House, who is now the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of West Virginia. He was very much against criminal expungement, but we didn't give up. And what we first passed was allowed for certain nonviolent felonies to be reduced to misdemeanors. It wasn't a perfect bill, but it was a compromise, and it was all we were able to pass under Speaker Armstead. And then when Governor Justice announced Jim's Dream, which later became the Jobs and Hope bill, what we did in House Judiciary, we added full expungement for certain nonviolent crimes into that bill. And now in West Virginia, certain felonies don't have to follow you around for the rest of your life. And when people are involved in that Jobs and Hope program, it can speed up the process and shorten the waiting period before they're off paper and the time when they can petition for that expungement. So we were able to do that, add that to the program that in the governor's bill. I think other people have talked about other criminal justice reform that we've worked on, reentry issues, such as like a very simple one that by going to these reentry councils and just talking to people who've been recently paroled or released from prison, one recurring theme we'd hear is that they had a hard time getting an ID. If they'd been away for a while, they came out, they didn't know where their birth certificate was or where the social security card was. They'd go to the DMV and they didn't have any proof of residency. Well, one thing we do know, we know who folks are who just got out of prison. That's people we definitely know who they are. So what we did was a very simple solution. We extended that prison ID to 90 days once they were released, and told the DMV that you have to accept this as a proof of residency. We know who they are. So when you bring that prison ID to the DMV, you can get an ID now. That was something else for you. A very simple solution to help people get back to work once they get out. So things like that, I think, by bringing my experience as somebody in long-term recovery to the legislature, that we've been able to get, working with everybody else and being able to get some things done. One thing that I think what I would really like to move towards, hopefully in the next few years, hopefully sooner, is when we talk about prevention, to really think about what prevention really is. Is prevention just going into a grade school and giving a lecture? I think what we really need to do to address prevention in this state, like why is West Virginia the epicenter for this drug issue? It's because of poverty issue. That's why. So what we really need to address is the root cause, poverty. We need to address adverse childhood experience. We know that children who suffer childhood trauma are so much more likely to wind up with problems. That's prevention. So I hope we can really start getting to the root cause of the issue and stop putting Band-Aids on bullet wounds there at the legislature. Because it doesn't seem like much. We passed some good bills and we gotten some things done, but we still lead the nation in all these areas that we don't want to lead the nation in. So anyway, I think I've talked long enough. I'm really interested in hearing from y'all.
Well, right out of the gate, I can tell you the whole time, we saw you waiting, and I'm like, oh, good, Mike's here, because I want to talk about, what you just mentioned, the Good Samaritan law. I am still seeing a lot of cases where people are still being arrested. I just had somebody in my program recently who had gone with his girlfriend. They bought heroin. She overdosed. They went and parked and she overdosed. He called 911 because the Narcan he had didn't bring her back. And he was arrested for DUI. And he was like, well, no, I wasn't driving then. We drove here. Now I got high. And, the more that happens, I'm preaching to the choir here, the less likely people are going to be to call 911, and people are going to die as a result. So I'm just wondering if there's anything that the legislature could do to, designate funds to make more people aware of that. I mean, you were instrumental in passing that law, but it's like we passed it, and now you'd be amazed how many people I talk to about the existence of that law, and they're shocked that it exists. And it's been there for years now. So I think that we need law enforcement to know about it, and we need the general population to really know about it and understand it.
Well, and law enforcement is part of that population too. So I think anytime that somebody from the Office of Drug Control Policy is before the Health and Human Resources Committee, which is a committee that I serve on, I'm the minority chair currently of that committee. I always bring that up. Like, where's the PR campaign? And I don't think it's an act of the legislature. I mean, the DHHR has a certain amount of funds, and that funds that office as well as Marshall University, I believe, and WVU, which also funds that office. To the Office of Drug Control Policy, there should be a PR campaign attached. We passed that bill in 2015. We passed that bill over 5 years ago, and most people don't know about it. You talk to people that you work with in your program, Matt, and do they know that they have immunity if they call? I mean, how is the law going to work if people don't know about it? I believe that's up to the executive. We fund them, but ultimately they spend the money, and we just need to really get that through to the executive branch, more specifically the Office of Drug Control Policy, that there needs to be a strong PR campaign attached with that law if it's going to work.
Good. So that might be a good recovery advocacy project.
I agree.
Now you put more stuff on us already.
Okay, we passed the bill. It wouldn't take, they have all sorts of PR campaigns.
I do know this as far as the Good Samaritan bill goes, that I know from people that I talk to and people that I've had dealings with before, is that there's a fear from law enforcement that, I can call, there could be no paraphernalia around or anything like that, but law enforcement believes I have something to do with it. They're going to create a charge for me to get arrested on. I might not get arrested for calling 911 or administering naloxone, but they're going to figure something else out, whether it's, possibly trespassing if I'm on an abandoned lot, or abandoned house, or any number of things. So I think you have to dispel that fear, and that helps with bridging a really honest, open line of communication between the law enforcement community and the recovery community, and say, look, if you're doing this to save somebody's life, we're not going to try to find a reason to lock you up, kind of thing.
They're having this same issue in other states. I mean, Virginia just passed theirs. This past legislation, they just passed their Good Samaritan law, and it makes me think now that ours has been passed 5 years and nobody's made anything about it or done anything about it yet. That might be a recovery advocacy project thing. Oh, Lord. All right. So moving past the Good Samaritan law. Advocacy in legislation, specifically recovery advocacy in legislation, has been missing for yeah, that's why you started. That's why you decided to run for office. So like, what does advocacy and legislation look like? Where are next steps from here? I remember the 55 strong with the teachers a couple years ago. Was it just last year, maybe year before last, I think. But I mean, we have the numbers of the people to get them to show up. What does it look like?
Well, I'll tell you what it will look like if we're able to do it successfully is it'll look very, very big. Because one of the things by being the epicenter of this drug crisis here in West Virginia, as we all know here, that one of the byproducts of that is we have a whole lot of people in recovery. And I do believe we need to organize. I can tell you right here in the neighborhood that I'm beaming in from right now, we have, I could point to several different. I'm right next door to a recovery house actually, and there's several down the block from that. They're all over the place. We need to reach out to the directors of the houses, the residents of these houses. First of all, make sure everybody who's able to vote is registered to vote and gets to the polls. I think that policymakers tend to listen a lot more when they know there's a huge voting block of people who are paying attention to what they're doing. And I think and more folks in recovery need to run for office, and get elected and have a seat at the table. I love that slogan, nothing about us without. Because it happens there. Really, it really makes a difference when you're coming up with legislation how this is actually going to work. First couple of years I was up there. Actually, it goes on every year because so many politicians want to appear to be tough on crime. So they'll go in and they'll increase the fines for that or lengthen the sentence for that. And this is stuff that's been done for 80 years. We've been doing the same thing. Saying that we're going to arrest our way out of this, and we will hear from leadership that we're going to take a different approach to it. But every year we invent new felonies, we increase fines and sentences, and I don't think anybody can say that any of that is helping us win this war on drugs. We're not. We need to try a different approach, and what it's going to take is more people at the table who have that life experience. From all sides of the issue. I'll give you one quick example, though. It was talked about that family drug court, which has been a great thing down in southern West Virginia, because often, a lot of this dysfunction in the family comes from substance use disorder. And that the Judge Thompson, who had the idea for having, we already had a criminal drug court, but actually having a family drug court, he was speaking about we had a staff member who's also in long-term recovery. That's what it took. A staffer who's in long-term recovery attended a conference where Judge Thompson was talking about it. She brought it to us, to the legislature, said, you guys need to assist in this and pass this and create this pilot project for family drug court. Pretty soon, they're going to be all over the state because it's a good idea and it works.
I do have one more question. Well, we got you here, Mike.
What's that?
Let's say we get for this upcoming session, we get all these people in recovery fired up, and we show up at the Capitol. What should we be asking for in this session? What can we do? Do you have any ideas on that? Should it be the PR for the Good Samaritan program? Is there something else that's like in the pipeline that we need to get behind?
Yeah, I'm actually for the PR for the Good Samaritan law. We don't need to wait for the session for that. That doesn't require legislation. That's just a matter of priorities with the Office of Drug Control Policy. I think, unfortunately, a lot of the times we'd also be playing defense, and when some of these bills come out to create this new felony or increase that sentence, just maybe some people being able to get up and share their life experience about how there really isn't a deterrent to an addict and active addiction. Deterrent doesn't work, and just sharing the life experience to show what kind of policy would work. And there's always more to do in the areas of criminal justice reform. That law definitely needs some tweaks here and there. I would say to work with groups like American Friends Services. That I believe you're already working with, and with Lida Shepherd. And there's always a whole host of criminal justice reform bills to work on. Bond reform that we haven't been able to really get a good bail bond reform bill. There's a whole. We're not going to run out of issues to work on.
So you think then that the PR for the Good Samaritan law, I should take that to like the recovery subcommittee for the governor's council for them to go ahead and push that up. And then if they don't, I'm not saying they're not going to, because they listen, they are great. I'm like, love being a part of it. Like, what happens if they don't though? What do you go from there? Like, they will or they won't. I don't know. I've only been on it not for very long. They just created it. But that's the first step.
Well, I mean, if they do it, I guess if the legislature were to act and say you have to do this, then they would have to do it. But we passed the law that says there is immunity from criminal prosecution if you make that phone call to save somebody's life. We need to let people know about it. I think to start, we don't necessarily need legislation to do that. They need to do a PR campaign.
Anything else?
Any more questions?
I don't have anything. We definitely appreciate your time. We appreciate your leadership in the house. It's been fun to watch over the last several years.
Thank
you. Go from the new kid on the block to somebody we see in the media all the time.
Yeah, I live close to the TV station.
Yeah. All right, you guys have anything?
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just checking to see if either of them had anything.
Oh yeah, Kenny, this is Mike. Mike, this is Kenny. Like, your formal introduction, because earlier Mike was like, why do I not know who he is? And like, not to like throw you under the bus or anything. He's new in town. Like, and he's new in the community.
Yeah, I've only been in the area 6 months, so it's almost 7 months now. So I'm pretty much 7 months into this area, new to the whole recovery field, and Joanna Vaughn tells me for a lot of stuff. So just go with the flow, just do it.
Well, it's good to meet you, and welcome back. Let's get to work.
That's all I do.
I think that tonight's discussion has been phenomenal with all of the candidates. I mean, like, we talked about every aspect, I think, almost that we could have talked about. People got personal. People shared stuff that they probably don't share. Man, what do you guys think? Good night.
Yeah, I think we can probably let Mike go. We might want to debrief for a minute.
One thing, you asked about something. Okay, I'll throw this out here real quick. It's a one-word answer to what really we need to advocate for. That's funding. Funding for all these houses that are around here, and also, also coming up with ways to have some sort of standards, because I think we owe it to the people who are going to some of these facilities that they have top-notch facilities.
We got Jenny Hill and Emily Burkhead hitting that ground hard.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. It's good to see everybody.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
It was great.
Take care. And I'm going to go ahead and I guess we can wrap this up. I'm going to end the live stream.
Don't end it yet. I just want to go ahead and mention that all of the candidates that you heard tonight that you got to listen to. This was a nonpartisan event. We invited all of the candidates. I know I said that at the beginning. I'm going to say it now. We invited all of the candidates, and these are the candidates who showed up. And we even went an hour over our time. So these are the candidates who stuck through and waited, like, because it's been a great conversation tonight, and I'm gonna end up going back and reading the comments and stuff, but I sure do appreciate everyone that participated, the quality of the conversations, and vote recovery. Like, now you can end it.
All right. Yeah, and thank you to everybody that watched this. I mean, this was a little bit longer than we expected, and we appreciate your time too.
Yes.
Definitely.